little kids are crazy for. Cthulhu. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity. Crazy crunchity. Crazy
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y. Cthulhu. Certain General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Circuit, and we have got an absolutely loaded schedule for you here today. Normally, we do one SCC game and then a couple SPL matchups, but not today. With the SPL Phase 2 playoffs this weekend, we are front-loading everything. 4 SCC matches today, all of them best of threes, so plenty of Smite competitive action to look forward to here today. I can't do it alone, though. Goremizer joins me for our first set of the day. And Gore, we get a lot of looks. Remember, we're at the end of the first round robin for all these SCC teams, so everyone has played everyone but their current opponents. This will be the last team that they have to play. So we'll get a lot of answers today on where comfortability is in the standings.
Yeah, and I think that's like big question marks for a lot of teams. You look at Joystick, started off with Cherio, now don't have Cherio. That's going to maybe murk things up for them in the jungle. Of course, other teams that are looking to gain that traction that we're used to seeing out of them. I'm looking towards Elysium, a team that gravitates towards the top, looking to stay towards the top. Same thing for teams like Pandemonium. And I want to, you know what? I can just name every team in Europe if I kept going at it. But at least those two teams are the ones that I keep my eye on, as well as seeing like the turmoil that is North America, because I feel like there are way more teams fighting for first in NA right now, which makes things just absolutely chaos.
Well, don't worry. If you're over in EU, we're going to front load the EU matchups here today, back-to-back EU sets, and then the final 2 sets of the day will be North American sets. Here's the schedule for this week in the SCC. So Thursday and Thursday, those are your blocks. The first matchup is Team Joystick versus Snake Hunters. Pandemonium versus Goodnight Nick is our second set of the day here today. Then we will transition on over to North America, where the Sturdy Artisans and Sleekness will face off. And then Tiburones versus Herculean Hooves will be the final matchup of this broadcast. Now, after broadcasts on Saturday and Sunday, that's when we'll see the other matchups. Here are your EU standings for the SCC. Elysium, no surprise, they are up top. Team Joystick, one of the teams that's playing in this first matchup, just behind them at 3-1 against the Snake Hunters Gore, who are 1-3. So there is some parity up top. You got this 4-0 team, you got this 3-1 team, then 3 teams tied at 1-3. So this is an important set for the Snake Hunters, especially when you go into that second round robin. If you're able to separate yourself kind of from that bottom half, you're going to be better off.
And that's, I mean, not only that, if, let's say, like you said, Snake Hunters here, you get this win, you not just separate yourself from just F6 and Goodnight Nick, but you also bring Team Joystick a little bit further down to your level, so you close the gap a little bit better for everyone all around. Of course, then, depending on how Elysium goes later this week, there's maybe more of a gap between first and second. But you know what? You can't think about that. You just got to think about your own place in the standings. And I think that's where things are really interesting for both of these teams.
Yeah, Elysium's playing just F6 this week, Gore. So I think, and there's no disrespect to just F6, I think that'll be an Elysium win. I think it would be an Elysium win against any team in the SCC.
That's usually an easy bet. If you see Elysium versus, just say Elysium until you see, like, Game 1, this is how their sets go, right? Game 1, they're going to potentially end up losing it, whether it's from goofing off, whether it's just from unfortunate play, whatever. Whatever, you know, throw some sort of excuse, some Johns out there, but no matter what, there's something. Game 1 gets goofed up. Game 2 is a lot closer, and then Game 3 is an Elysium stomp. That's just usually the way their sets tend to go. They'll go 3 games every time, and it will follow that exact pathing.
Well, now we can talk a little bit about our first matchup. Teams trying to keep pace with Elysium and that pathing that they have to all their set wins. Snake Hunters, the first team we're talking about here, Gore, they are 1-3 as we just saw in the standings. A team that has shown plenty of promise.
Yeah.
Getting that on a consistent basis is then the next big question. Rapio, Captain Odie, Pretty Prime, Vaporish Coast, and Silenced is this roster. And when you hear those names, Gore, admittedly it's surprising that they're 1-3.
Honestly, and I think it just goes to showcase how convoluted the teams are right now. I guess convoluted is the right way to say it. Chaotic in the standings is the way I would describe it, because this is a very solid team, as you had mentioned. Just highlighting Pretty Prime and specifically Coast, the two like carries for the team, that should be enough to elevate this roster forward. But Odie, Rapio, Silence have been very accomplished in their careers in the SCC and have done a really good job, I think, even this year, of showcasing why they deserve to be here. It's just getting that collectively to turn into wins. A lot of these European games tend to turn into some of these late game fights, and it's just a couple of mistakes. That's all that matters, all that makes the big difference for them. And so I'm looking at how they can clean this up, whether it's getting aggressive early on. I mean, we can see some of these highlights are quote-unquote early. I mean, 15 minutes in, you're getting into some good fights. I think Snake Hunters have a lot of promise, and I'm excited to watch them. Yeah,
I think a lot of the Snake Hunters team goes through that duo lane. Silenced and Vaporish Coast carry a lot of weight with those names. Vaporish Coast, I feel like just continually standing out to me.
Yes.
In the matchups where see this player play. Big multi-kills are always on the menu when Vaporish Coast is in the matchup, and it's fun to watch. Of
individual players, I'm pretty sure Vaporish Coast has the most pentas competitively. And that's like across most like SCC up to, now, well, I guess SCL back in the day. We used to play on console. So I think there's a lot of that just showcases a lot. Look, it's difficult to get pentakills in any level of competitive. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's console league, if it was Challenger Circuit or SPL. It's just, SPL I give a little bit more seasoning to, because that is really, really difficult. But at the same time, he's got like 6.
Sure, it's hard enough to get pentakills in casual conquest. You can't take away pentas from anyone. Their opponents today, Snake Hunters' opponents today, will be Team Joystick. This is a pretty star-studded roster as well. Sap, Ikram, Lamogao, Sarpei, and Calvin. And Gore, this is a team who's chasing this Elysium squad, and I think have really banded together. The chemistry really starting to flow for this team. And I think you start with this player here, Ikram. The matchup up against Vaporish Coast is going to be fun to watch. Yeah, that one's actually going to be really just entertaining from top to bottom. And this is a team that's interesting. If you're remembering, I guess, past conversations, Joystick had Cherio in the jungle. And to me, that was like the headline conversation to have for them. They don't have Cherio in the jungle anymore. And admittedly, and this is no offense to Cherio, he was never really the star for the team anyway. Like, when they were winning, it wasn't necessarily because of Cherio, the same way that sometimes we've gotten used to seeing, like, maybe adapting go hyper carry mode, things like that. And so I think this is a team that, despite having to change up the jungle, they pick up Sarpei, who is a fantastic jungler that we've seen in the SCC in the past as well. I think that this is a team that has a lot of promise behind them, showcased in the standings. And you had mentioned Echrome. I also have to turn my eyes not just to Mogao, not just to Calvin, who I will admit Calvin was a name I wasn't familiar with, but Sap, who is another name that I had no idea who this person was the first time we saw Joystick. And they have quickly grown in my heart as a mid laner. Like, they have played very well, and I'm excited to see what they're going to bring out today. I'm glad you mentioned Lamogao, too, because it feels like every time Mogao is loading into a game, there's this possibility that it's going to be some like Kumba solo? Weird solo lane pick, right? And that always adds some intrigue in these matchups. So I always enjoy watching Lamogao play. And Team Joystick definitely better off for it. You mentioned Cherio. As a small undernote on this one, Cherio is over on Pandemonium now, who will be playing later on today. So don't worry, you'll get your Cherio fill here in just a little bit. Picks and bans, though, for game number 1. Ready to kick off here. And these SCC teams will draft themselves, hopefully, into victory. And if you're Team Joystick, that means keeping pace with Elysium, something that is not easy to do. So we've talked a lot about the players and the specific matchups here in this one, Gore. And this is the type of level where you might be able to kind of single out individual players, target them a little bit heavier, and taking away the Kulkullen. Certainly a good start here for Team Joystick. You know, the potential to run over a lane with that pick is very high. I think it's this weird conversation between these two teams where if you're Joystick right now with the Kulkullen ban, I think you want to control some of the matchups specifically Mogao is going to get into, because as we had just mentioned,
Mogao likes to pick some weird things, so it's not going to be too surprising if there's maybe even one more or two more bans thrown over towards the solo lane, knowing what Joystick like to pick up. It also opens them up because they don't necessarily need that Cucullin, right? I mean, if you are willing to play Akumba, the Cthulhu lately, I will even throw out there that Mogao used to be one of the best Hades players that we used to see and loved playing that in solo, and for a while I think it was the only thing that they would play in solo. I think it opens you up to so many different conversations that Joystick don't have to worry about the bans that way.
Yep. And then Odin gets locked in, and so we've seen plenty of Odin presence. Solo lane has been the usual destination for that pick, though Sobek keeps things interesting. Not sure we're going to be seeing Odin support here in this one, Gore. Sobek likely lands over in the duo lane there.
They've done each other's role before. There's a realm of conversation.
They have the ability to swap around with one another.
Mogao likes Guardians.
You're right. You absolutely could see those flip around. So Odin and Sobek here locked in for Team Joystick. Gore, very staunch front line. I mean, talk about not only single target isolation between the stun and the pluck between Odin and Sobek, then the cage is so good at disrupting team fights.
Yeah, and especially when you look at what they're going up against. I mean, Artemis immediately. Camazotz can jump out of the cage, so that makes things a little more complicated, but Artemis can't. That's an easy lockdown target if you're me. And this also comes back to that conversation. Sap likes to play the Morrigan, and this is a great case for a double ult, right? I mean, you can get Morrigan, drop the cage as Odin, and then drop the cage as Odin again, and if you're someone like Artemis, you're just going to have to deal with that. Phantom becomes all of a sudden a top-tier relic for you, and I think that, in my mind, would immediately be where I'm going in the bans.
Yep, and Gore, I agree with you here, but Snake Hunters, they have Morrigan in mind. It was Baba Yaga that got taken away. Morrigan was still there, but I think that's smart here, Gore. There's just way too much potential across the board for a Morrigan transformation, whether it was the Odin, whether it was something else. Very strong there. Fafnir left open pretty far into the drafting phase here, especially with an Artemis on your team. The ability to stim yourself up with the way that Silver Branch has been performing here recently, I think that's great value here for Snake Hunters. You get a lot of what you want in your first 3 picks, and then Fafnir makes his way into the second wave of picks here. I think it's a great pick.
I would argue, all top 4 of them so far on the side of Snake Hunters has been a very, very, not just solid draft, but it's cohesive. Raijin maybe not so much with the Fafnir, although that's just because Raijin, it's a mage, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're not going to have many that are going to synergize with it. The Artio is the one that's confusing me a little bit, which isn't necessarily confusing me. We've seen her a lot more recently, and she's been very successful. She is annoying. Brings a lot to the table, but it's going to be interesting to see how she can handle, I'm going to guess, the solo lane matchup versus Odin. At least damage-wise, it could go back and forth. Artio actually has a lot of capabilities to slow him down and stop him from getting damage out or stuns out.
Yeah, that cripple field could have some value as well, depending on who this Artio is able to stand on. Fenrir and Merlin round out the draft here. Yeah, in general, Artio is going to be disruptive. Fenrir and Merlin round out the draft here for Joystick. Or do you like the way that their 5 rounded out?
If that cripple field wasn't on the other side, I'd like them a lot more. Every single member of Joystick gets affected by that in one way or another, and I think that's what makes things a little more complicated. That being said, that opens up a lot of burn and a lot of early aggression.
Well, Gore, it's Team Joystick trying to keep pace with Elysium, and it's Snake Hunters trying to capitalize on that potential. Game 1 starts right now.
Thank you so much, Dulcin and Gormizer. It's J-Mac and Mifflin here for the first game of the day for SCC for the European region. And what better game to kick it off than with Team Joystick and Snake Hunters? We have Echrome on his signature Heimdall. Last week, this pick got taken away from him in the first 2 games. It was banned away, then it was picked away from him, and now we get to see him pick it up here for game 1.
In an effort to get that Heimdall, though, what did they leave open, J-Mac? I'd say the best in-slot hunter for the Penta kit, as the desk highlighted Vaporish Coast in contention for the most Penta kills inside of the entirety of competitive Smite, and now playing one of the best hunters that we've seen, Artemis, locked in. Gotta think that Echrome, despite having his comfort pick, is going to have his work cut out for him.
And not only that, they gave Pretty Prime one of the top 3 mages in the game as well with that Raijin, so giving a lot of comfort over here to Echrome, but I think that's one of their primary win conditions has been Echrome out of this duo lane. Mogao not going on one of his, I'll call them one of his signature kind of out there solo picks. The Cthulhu, not so weird, but the Kumba solos, and you get things like Hades or Nox into it as well, but we'll see how it pans out for him on this Odin.
Yeah, it's not to say that Mogao doesn't have plenty of experience playing the Odin. I think very recently, before everyone else was picking it, he was taking the Odin, and we were saying, oh, that's something new. That's something we don't see too often. And unfortunately for Mogal, everyone started to pick up on that as well, started to realize that this Odin just affords your team so much pressure, so much early game rotation prowess, just that ring of spears so strong before a Phantom can come online, or even just win Phantoms online, and it shifts how you have to address the team fight in the late game. So I've got high expectations for Mogal on this Odin so far, but Captain Odie as well on this RDO. That's a pick that has really started to hit its stride in recent weeks. Yarkor notably been one to play this god at a very high level and has some decent matchups. You might get to see it right here. Sarpei on the Fenrir. I mean, as long as Odie's around, I don't think Brutalize ever works.
No, there's not a chance that Sarpei tries to fight into Captain Odie at any time. In fact, I would probably be willing to bank on Sarpei probably never coming over to the solo lane unless he has Ragnarok available, just because that Cripple Field shuts down everything that this Fenrir wants to do. As you take a look across the board for the builds, Eye of the Jungle will be the choice for Sarpei, so get a little bit of vision when he drops those camps down. Meanwhile, Rapio going for the Mannequin Scepter for that extra basic attack damage.
He is Vaporish Coast getting a little bit aggressive here. Was not quite in range to find the Transgressor's fate. Had he done so, Echrome likely falls down to sub 50% HP, and now Coast with no one caught out.
Calvin gets plucked on Vaporish Coast. Vaporish is trying to run away, but doesn't have the damage to do so, doesn't have the distance to go. Echrome picks up first blood with the Heimdall.
All right, Echrome, you hit the ground running, but what can you do with the lead now that you've got it? First blood bounty does go the way of the Heimdall, and now Team Joystick looking to push that advantage. Red buff invade.
Looking for it, but immediately he'll be pushed away. Pretty prime. Just going to make sure to zone him away from trying to pick it up. Instead, it'll be Sarpei who picks up that red buff himself. So a little bit of extra damage online for this Fenrir early. Unfortunately for him, that means he won't be able to pick up speed buff, but he may not be able to pick that up as Rapio's rotated over to try and deal with it. He'll manage to steal that away.
This seems to be the response from a lot of teams recently. This first rotation red buff invade is very common, not just in the SCC, but also the SPL, and very recently we've seen speed buff as the response.
Calvin caught inside the trap and just manages to barely squeak out of there. A little bit more damage. One more basic from Coast would have done it, but the minions were able to block just enough damage for the support to get through. But Calvin playing very forward and aggressive on this Sobek, and that's what you'd like to see from this support pick.
It is, and he's already generated his ADC a fair bit of a lead here, but at the expense of his own farm. Calvin now level 3 to Eyes Silenced level 4 means that this Fafnir might be able to rotate out a little bit earlier on, try and drag some of the attention away from Team Joystick's duo lane. If he's able to force Calvin to leave as well, could create a situation where Echrome gets the 1v1 up against Vaporish Coast, but Sarpei already hovering on this side. Gotta think we're not gonna see that 1v1 anytime soon.
Now, before this team, they had Cherio coming from the jungle. Now they have Sarpei, and the desk highlighted it really well was, yeah, Cherio was on this team, but he wasn't necessarily the or the only star player for this team. I've been enjoying what I've seen out of this squad so far, especially from Sap in the mid lane. His picks, while they may not be the cream of the crop as far as it goes, you know, he's obviously not very often able to get the things like Tiamat or Morgan Le Fay, but what he's been able to perform with on this Baba Yaga has been a little bit different than what we see in the SPL, so I'm curious how his Merlin play is going to come out this game.
Well, I'm sure it'll be just fine. I mean, the Team Joystick has a pretty decent composition for early objective confirm, or not confirm, burn rather. Sarpei out of the jungle on this Fenrir with Seething Howl has immense auto attack damage. We don't have to highlight how strong Merlin is on Gold Furies and Pyromancers, just that flame stance does do like 30% per rotation, so I think that Joystick, if they are able to confirm this pressure and keep it up in the near future, especially around this duo lane, Gold Fury might be under risk.
And I think this is what you're going to see a lot on this solo side of the map. It's just Sarpei rotates over, they get the blue buff, and then they leave Mogal alone to do his own thing, and it'll probably be similar here for Rapio. Not really two gods that you want to try and fight into, Odin and Artio respectively, for the solo lane sides. You really can't fight him into them, even with the gods you drafted.
No, Rapio's in a very good position right now and actually has a distinct advantage over Sarpei after picking up that Mannequin Scepter. Means that he's probably a little bit more effective inside of the team fight. Sarpei, though, does have the power spike of the Jotun's Wrath, which should be able to equalize that until Rapio is able to work his way back to base. But as of right now, seems like both teams are very content with this slower pace, and despite finding first blood, it's actually Snake Hunters ahead in the farm department as of right now. So you got to evaluate, especially when we're talking about the European SCC, which one of these teams has a better late game, because it's very likely that that's the point of the game that both of these squads are aiming for, and I'm not sure that either team has too distinct an advantage. I'd have to give the edge to Snake Hunters just because of Artio is a late-game teamfight monster, Pretty Prime playing one of those top 3, top 4 mid-lane mages, and then can't sleep on the Artemis pick. I mean, you might have fallen down early on, but Artemis just scales so hard thanks to the new bow build, or I'm not even sure we're allowed to call it new anymore, or if he so elects, and Vaporish Coast does genuinely choose to elect, go for that crit build.
We've seen a few passings of the bow build at this point by now. Sap and Calvin gonna try and go for silence. He's got his ultimate, so he'll transform just to deter them from going any further forward. But Pretty Prime is looking for the action up on the Tycho drums. We'll get some damage against Calvin and try and push Sarpé away. Sarpé blinks in, goes for the Ragnarok, picks up Pretty Prime and gets the beads, and then the Brutalize will finish the job.
Sarpé now going to work his way out of this one, and Snake Hunters, despite having the rotation from Coast, should be forced to retreat.
Echrom's rotation over with that Gallarhorn puts a lot of pressure back against Coast and Silence. All three of them forced back under the T1 tower, and that lets Echrom head back to the wave just a little bit quicker than Vaporish Coast can. And thanks to that Bifrost, he could get back even sooner, but instead he'll hold on to it and now maybe even look towards a purple invade.
It's not up just yet, so instead they're going to go for these camps. It's unfortunate timing for Team Joystick, just seconds away from being able to push that lead even further. Thought maybe they'd go for the red buff, but it wasn't quite up yet, and with Rappi over here as well, might be pretty hard to steal this.
Calvin's going to try for it, but be unsuccessful in doing so. Instead, he'll just strip one of the minis away from that camp, away from Rapio. So, hey, it's not a total loss for it. Or I say them, but, you lost your beads for it, so you didn't get the buff, you didn't get a kill afterward, and now your Blink's on cooldown for 2 more minutes.
They were able to at least, Team Joystick that is, strip away the beads from Pretty Prime, so he's going to have to play very safe in the near future. Does not have the Tycho drum available currently, no beads for about 100 seconds, means that Sarpé has got a very strong opportunity now to make sure that Pretty Prime stays behind inside of this game. Expect this Fenrir to start rotating very heavily towards mid.
Sap with a slight level lead over Pretty Prime now thanks to that last fight. Pretty Prime has to leap away and use the Tycho drums immediately, thinking that Sarpé was going to go in with the ultimate. That's a huge defensive off the board for Pretty Prime, and half his health bar too. Sap throws out that Eclipse and just deals a lot of damage.
Now Pretty Prime's going to have to play even safer, but instead it's Rapio the target of the stun. Unchained is good, but Rapio very safe on this Camazotz, is able to just walk on out.
That's some comfort for Sap as he is sitting at the enemy tower line, though he does have the backup of Calvin and Sarpé there just in case anything goes south, but he'll take a stun from Silence and not really care about it. He's in no real threat because Pretty Prime has to go back to base. Silence gets plucked back and immediately leaps back towards Tier 1 tower.
So for right now, Team Joystick have been controlling these fights very well. They've had the faster rotations, they're choosing the engagements, they're forcing engagements on mid camps that generally we don't even see too many tussles over inside of the mid, but as of right now, Team Joystick very willing to take these fights, and I think a lot of it has to do with Sarpé and Sap. Sap off to a very fast start, has been able to benefit from a 1-level lead already, 9 minutes into this game, and Sarpé on this Fenrir is just going to keep pushing the aggression, likely a Blackthorn Hammer in this next slot, meaning that he's going to get a raw infusion, about 400 HP. It's effectively making him a tank at this point, as nobody really can shred through that much on the side of Snake Hunters quickly. But it is a rotation for Snake Hunters, maybe too far towards the purple.
2v4, Echrome uses the ultimate immediately to try and even out the fight. Sap rotates over, but it may be too little too late for Calvin. He will not make it out. The bat out of hell from Rapio will chase him down and gun him down. Snake Hunters finally on the board.
Snake Hunters able to finally defend their purple buff this time around, and Team Joystick have to limp back to their respective lanes. That said, Silenced may have limped the wrong way.
Uses his ultimate, but he's got no mana on the drop down, and Sap has the fire ready. Gets just enough to transfer himself back over and able to get back to the safety of the tower. Silence just narrowly makes it out of there.
Yeah, Sarpé elects to hold on to his ultimate there, so instead it's going to be used on Pretty Prime, who has the beats available, I thought, but just doesn't use it.
Has them, but Sap was so far away, he didn't have any worry of it, so no purification beads burn, and he may be able to have that safety for if Mogao rotates over. Mogao tries to go for a speed invade, but is unsuccessful in taking that away. Instead, he'll throw the spear at Silas and drop the cage. It's 4 players that were looking him down. Now it's only going to be Captain Odie who goes for the chase.
Captain Odie does have an immense amount of lockdowns, so could create the opportunity for Rapio to work his way forward, but Mogao's already created so much space. Shield should be coming up very shortly. Very low risk of death here, and instead just gets to hover inside the lane. Rapio now splitting a wave. Captain Odie already benefiting from the lead, won't be hurt too much by this split, but Lamogao given the opportunity to catch back up now.
Yeah, they get the most important thing out of it. They get the totem of coup. And
Yeah, help the team.
That's what everybody wants in those first 15, whether you're the hunter or the mid laner, even the support could always have a little bit of benefit when it comes to that totem of coup. So they're able to pick that one up at the very least of it. Rapio does save his speed buff despite the attempts for Mogao to steal it away, and Mogao once again has to deal with Captain Odie and deal with the pain of going up against Artio because, well, now Artio's the thing to play.
Yeah, this is a very interesting lane. Captain Odie can't do anything, but maybe hold that
Coast.
thought. Coast finds Sarpei.
Coast takes a ton of damage. The CC Muni wears off a little too early for him, and Sarpei will pick him up with the Ragnarok and one basic after gets the ultimate, but Vaporshkos does hold on to beads.
He does, realizing that really there's no way that it gets him out of there as far as he was into the lane. Rapio and Silence, on the other hand, trying to do the Pyro, but I don't think they out-confirm a Sobek.
Calvin's going to try for it, and Snake Hunters will manage to sneak that one away as you see Captain Odie rotate over. Now Calvin in danger, has to use that charge spray to get away, but those are his only two safety options, the ult and the pluck, and now that they're both down, so is he.
Rapio credit for this one, and now Snake Hunters finding a couple on the board, too, for them to the 3 of Team Joystick, and gold and experience still largely favoring the Order side team. As of right now, I'm expecting to start seeing some more skirmishes around these neutral objectives very soon once they're on the respawn. Team Joystick, though, it's been all aggression from them so far, and it's been all Sarpei as the root of it. Keep your eyes on this Fenrir. Despite having 2-0 be the slash line, it's reflected equally on the other side by Rapio, who is 100% kill participation and credit for his team. But only one of them has a tanky build. Team Joystick's jungler Sarpei can stick around in these engagements much longer than Rapio can.
We'll see where Rapio likes to take his build path if he does go for a little bit more bruiser, or if he decides to stick to this more glass cannon style. With that katana, it's looking like it's going to be more towards the latter. Echrome uses Through the Realms just to send Silenced away so they can try and go for a gank against Vaporshkos. They get the ultimate out of him, and they will get the beads as well as Sarpei picks him up with the Ragnarok. Echrome will just deal with the boar that's turned its sights towards him, and instantly Vaporshkos for the blink. Brutalize takes him down, but he's trapped inside because of the trap by Vaporshkos. Tower shot will be more than enough, and Rapio gets the credit.
Great trap from Coast. Had he been a little bit quicker, maybe he saves his life there from the Brutalize, but regardless was at least able to find the return kill, and that is good value to find for your team when you'd already expended both beads and ultimate. Sarpei, a very large bounty there, was 3-0. When the credit of the kill goes the way of Snake Hunters, as opposed to Vaporshkos 0-2, now 0-3.
Echrome looking to box against Rapio and is winning that boxing match. Calvin wants to continue the match if possible, uses the Lurking in the Waters, but doesn't continue forward because Pretty Prime has made a rotation in. Now Calvin might be in danger one more time, already down to half health, and the Taiko drums goes Pretty Prime, looking for some damage, pulls Echrome and Calvin back towards him, and the Raiju thrown out, but it will not bounce over to Echrome. Calvin able to make it out.
Good wherewithal from Calvin there to dig in his heels and actually start auto-attacking instead of just walking away towards his own tower. Actually gets benefit from the defense of Sobek's passive. That's about 30 prots both ways once you have fully stacked up your auto attack. So Calvin was really tanky right there. I mean, Taiko Drum was tickling this man, and despite having, 2 rotations of Pretty Prime's abilities cast on him as well as the ultimate, still hovering around that 50% HP.
You want to talk about tanky, he's just picked up his Stone of Fall, so if you want to get some benefit with those basic attacks, so now you're going to get even more. Get a couple of basics against enemy gods, you'll start building up some of that damage mitigation, and when you fully stack it, get some extra little bang for your buck forward. We've been seeing this a few times recently, usually with like Umojas or any of the more ranged basic attack-centric Guardians, but kind of doubles down here with Sobek.
It does. Sobek is going to struggle a little bit to utilize that item inside the late game. Very often in the late game, you pluck, and then you either find the pluck or you die immediately. You don't really have too many opportunities to find those auto attacks. But as of right now, I mean, around these neutral objectives, around these early team fights where he really does have a lot of effective HP, Stone of Fall is only going to make him that much tankier. But it's a slightly slower build as compared to what Silenced is going for immediately into the Sovereignty after Thebes, and then the Kusari after that. Silenced hitting his power spikes very fast.
Team Joystick have done a lot to try and keep Vaporshkos down, but so far he's only sitting at, maybe a half-level disparity against Echrome. So far, all this effort was just to more so minorly inconvenience Vaporshkos over anything.
And that's what they've done, and they haven't done enough, Team Joystick, to actually find a lead against him. Silver Branch Bow already picked up by Vaporish Coast, which is a massive power spike at this point in the game. Once he starts channeling that Vengeful Assault, he's already going to be benefiting from additional power from this item. Already gets the penetration as well, whereas Echrome has elected to go for a slightly more unique build.
Captain Odie caught inside the cage, but he's fairly tanky thanks to the double physical protection that he's built up. And he'll be able to turn around and try and get a little bit of that heal back against Mogao and deal a little bit of extra damage to it. A good attempt by Mogao, but at this stage of the game with just him, there's not a chance in the world he's killing Captain Odie by himself.
No, too much healing, too much defense, too much sustain from the Ardio at this point. Sarpei really needs to make the rotation over if there's any chance for that kill to happen, and we've already discussed how poor of a matchup it is for Fenrir into Ardio, so got to think it's all coming down to the late game team fight. Ardio, though, is not invincible. Sap is going to deal a ton of damage at this point. I mean, Calvin, if he's able to displace him, which is easier said than done, as Ardio does have a cripple field as well as beads available to her. So Team Joystick definitely have their work cut out for him once Captain Odie starts to rotate out.
Quick beads out of Rapio gets him out of the pluck from Calvin, but that's going to be beads now down for the jungler. So Snake Hunter's going to have to play a little bit more careful. At least their jungler will have to play a little bit more careful, especially against Sarpei. If that bat out of hell is even a split second late, it could be a nice pluck from Calvin or Sarpei to bring him right back into the fight. Now with those beads taken away, Team Joystick are going to look towards the Oni Fury.
And it's burning down very quickly. Silence, Vaporish, and Rapio on the way in.
Oni Fury taken down. Team Joystick does get it. Silence goes up in the ultimate. Sarpei with his own Ragnarok just looking to use the CC immunity to get away. Silence jumps on top, gets a stun, but immediately Sarpei will leap out. Cage dropped from Mogao just to zone them away and make sure that his team gets out.
Not much left to fight over, and Team Joystick, cognizant of that, decide to not fight over anything. Dragon Transformation does wear off from the Snake Hunters, but they're moving in very quickly towards the right-hand side, potentially going to force a fight on the Pyromancer, and if they find a pick this late in the game, I gotta think Fire Giant's on the menu.
Pyromancer immediately stripped away. Snake Hunter's able to grab one objective amongst the mix of it, but not looking immediately at the Fire Giant. Instead, you see Vaporish Coast taking it back, making sure he can get back and spend up a little bit of gold, but Sap and Echrome are looking for aggression in mid. They put some hefty poke on Pretty Prime. Silence able to get away just for the time being, but Sarpei goes in aggressively, misses the Brutalize, has the Ragnarok available, looking towards Pretty Prime, gets the Tycho Drums.
That's big burn on a Prime, but Sarpei starts channeling the ultimate, finds Vaporish, and finds the beads.
Gets the beads and the Aegis immediately afterwards. Calvin plucks it back, and Echrome takes him down with the basic attack, and that'll be the first kill of the fight, but everybody on Joystick is getting a little bit low. Mogao has to drop the cage. Rapio leaps right over and sets their sights towards Calvin and Mogao.
Certainly, someone's got to go help Sap 7. They do rejoin with Sarpei in the jungle.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
no,
Chrome. Yeah, sorry, bud.
Captain Odie is just battering him away, but the Aussie kicks in, and Echrome's able to get some nice lifesteal to stay alive, but is it going to be enough for him? Stunned out by Silence and dashed on by Captain Odie. That'll take him down, and Mogao zones away too and picks up a nice little kill of his own.
Captain Odie's still inside of the engagement. Mogao, no cage available, but the fight still looking good for Joystick.
Mogao leaps in the middle of all of them. Captain Odie's fighting against 4, but those 4 are much healthier than a Captain Odie. They take him down and make it a 3-for-1 trade. Silenced and Rapio both have to back away, and Team Joystick come up with a big win.
What a long engagement there, J-Mac. Team Joystick siege into the Tier 1 tower. It was a blink in from Sarpei to create space for Snake Hunters in the Tier 2, and Joystick didn't let up. They kept pushing into the Tier 2. Would have thought that could have been an opportunity for Snake Hunters to fight back in, and to be sure, they find a kill or two, but at the end of the day, Snake Hunters 1v1 or 2v2. They weren't able to really group up and utilize their numbers despite Team Joystick being scattered throughout the entirety of left side jungle and the mid lane. Snake Hunters essentially isolate themselves for them, and Team Joystick, with the lead that they have, were able to keep that engagement rolling. That said, Snake Hunters at the end of the day were able to at least defend that Tier 2 tower, but without their Tier 1, subsequent neutral objectives are going to be very easy for Team Joystick to force.
Mogao was able to get some value from that rotation, not just in the ways of getting a kill and assist, but putting 2 stacks on his Hide of the Urchin that he's picked up as his third full item. I won't count the axe itself or the mask as actual items until at least the axe is upgraded, to say the least, for it. But getting a couple stacks onto it, and now we see Team Joystick with a very small lead, about 2,500 gold in their favor, the largest lead that we've seen so far. And to say the largest lead at 20 minutes in the game is only 2,500, yeah, it sounds about correct for an EU SCC game.
Experience, though, moving very heavily in favor of Team Joystick. 6,500 experience to the Order side team, and you can see it reflected in a couple of levels across the board. 2 for Lamogao on a solo, 2 for the mid laner, Sap 7, and then a 1 level, maybe about a half level lead for Echrome. So it's generally solo and mid that are benefiting from the largest disparities here, and that means that you likely want to fight around that right-hand side of the map, and what better time to do so than 20-minute mark? That's the magical time where Fire Giant really starts to feel the threat of these enemy gods.
Sap's at level 20 now, so you can also go back and upgrade that Vampiric Shroud if he so chooses. But before they decide to go back and start buying up, they'll go for some fights over here by this red buff. Pretty Prime and Rapio going to try and make sure they can secure that one for their side of the map and make sure that Pretty Prime has a little extra damage. Silence will zone Calvin away, and Captain Odie with the rotation over, make sure to push Sap out. Silence looks like he's looking for more than just a defense, could be posturing up for a fight.
Yeah, it's moving very far forward. Early Caledonian Boar here from Vaporish Coast should spell the disengaged Team Joystick. There's nothing to fight over here.
There's nothing to fight for, but with Vaporish Coast's ultimate away, that could be an opportunity to try and push Snake Hunters out. The Fury is about to respawn here in just about 30 seconds or less. So it looks like that's the position that they're trying to establish for, is make sure they have vision and map control so they can try and go for it. Now looking towards Silence and Vaporish Coast. Echrome is caught on to misuse the Bifrost. Vaporish now the one in danger with no boar and no defense is available to you. Sarpei able to pick him up with just the damage from the Bridwin explosion.
And now Silence forced to retreat as well. Early Dragon Transformation but leaves Rapio behind.
Bat out of hell gets him away, but Sap looks for him on the ground, misses the Eclipse and the subsequent damage afterwards. Serapio makes it out, but he loses out on his beads, and Vaporish Coast lost not just his life, but both sets of his relics.
Yeah, both relics. 5th death of the game. Vaporish Coast struggling inside of this matchup. Sarpei has been a part of, I want to say, all 5 of the kills onto Vaporish Coast at this point, and now Team Joystick, having eliminated the ADC from the Snake Hunters, are able to shift their attention towards this Primal Fury. Does burn down very quickly. Desync timers means they can head back to base, spend their well-earned gold, and then immediately start to work their way over towards the Pyromancer. Worth noting, though, Snake Hunters have very good vision dominance on the Fire Giant side of the map. Team Joystick going to have to fight into that if Snake Hunters elect to put up a defense. And with Vaporish Coast already posturing towards his right-hand side, the left-hand side of the map, got to think that Fire Giant's not really on their minds.
And look where Mogao's been positioning himself, up in this mid lane towards this right side of the jungle, because last time that the Fury was taken, immediately the Snake Hunters responded with the Pyromancer. Pyromancer is back up, and we saw Mogao trying to position around to make sure nobody went for it. Now you can see some pings on the map. That's where the next big objective is going to come through. Well, Fire Giant being there as well. We're starting to get to that point of the game where getting a few good picks, 2, maybe even 3, and you can start looking towards Fire.
Yeah, I don't even think you need picks at this point. Team Joystick are looking to just establish dominance. Pyromancer burned down very quickly before I was even able to finish the complete thought. And Team Joystick have eliminated the easier of the 2 neutral objectives on this side of the map. Snake Hunters, though, are grouped up as 5 on the right-hand side, which means to me they're looking for an engagement. I got to agree with this call. I mean, you're looking at a nearly 7,000 gold deficit. Experience is starting to equalize itself across the board for these teams. So Snake Hunters, at any point, if there was a good fight for them, it has to be here. Because if Fire Giant goes to Joystick, with how many towers and Phoenixes are available to be taken, this gold lead is going to compound out of control.
Mogao gets caught by 4. He leaps away from the root coming from Captain Odie. Now it looks like all players are looking for some kind of skirmish, some kind of fight. Silence gets plucked back immediately into the groove. Mogao drops the cage. It's only Silence caught inside. With his leap down, he has no way to get out except using the transformation, but Sap is so heavily poked out, but it doesn't matter because Echrome has more than enough damage to the basics to take down one. Vaporish Coast low, Vaporish Coast gone, and Mogao looking to dive under the tier 2 tower, but there's no target for him immediately on landing.
Mogao still has the shield, so should be able to work his way out of there. Rapio, though, on the chase.
Rapio goes in with the bat out of hell, and Sarpei dives the tier 2 tower, but is unsuccessful in finding anybody. Prime and Silence both able to make it out.
Goodness.
And Echrome is boxing against 3 of them. Aussie procs in. Bifrost to reposition himself behind. He's getting a ton of lifesteal back, and the Galahorn is going to shove one against the wall, making that 3 kills for Echrome in the fight.
Yeah, Echrome 1v3 that, by the way. Mogao and Calvin did not help. Echrome had to do it all on his own, and he comes up in a big way for his team. Rapio now at very low health, very low mana, no ultimate available. He's trying to push up mid, but Gotta think Sap should be able to chase this one out.
Sap goes in with the Blizzard, but doesn't find Rapio with it. He'll swap over to the Arcane stance, but gets hit with a huge Screech from Rapio, and that will be more than enough for Sap to rethink his decisions, but Pretty Prime doesn't have that option. Make that 4 kills on this right side that has gone E-Chrome's way.
Yeah, gotta put some respect on this Heimdall, Pretty Prime. Aren't allowed to step up to the wave like that. We're 25 minutes in. Your laning phase is over. You can't just clear in front of this Hunter. E-Chrome is doing it all for his squad. Fire Giant burning fast.
Sap and E-Chrome are doing a ton of damage to this Fire Giant. Only has a quarter of its health left. And a lot of that, look at Sap's build that he's gone through from that last little engagement till before now. He was able to fully buy up his Sacrificial Shroud and his Rod of Tahuti. Talk about a massive level 20 power spike.
That is a very large power spike and a unique itemization. You don't often see Sacrificial Shroud on just about anyone in Smite. I mean, occasionally we'll see it picked up on a Raijin. Occasionally, if Anubis ever worked his way into a match, we see it there. But outside of that, generally, it's the blood-soaked pickup here. So Sap 7 going a very unique route, and maybe Eye Silence going a not-so-unique route back to the Shadow Realm, or potentially back to his base without beads.
He does have the Relic Dagger, so those beads that he's been using will be up a little bit sooner, thanks to the passive from that item. He's picked up a Phantom as well to try and deal with Mogau's cages. Now, he was the only one caught inside the last cage, so luckily for him, he didn't have to use it, but having to pick up a Phantom against an Ode, I mean, look at the team that you have built around it. Vapor's Coast should be able to shred through that cage so quickly.
He should, but Phantom's still certainly faster, and not a bad relic in its own right. Still has damage mitigation percentage. I think it's about 10% damage mitigation inside of these team fights, so that's nothing to scoff at. That's a good deal of tankiness still afforded towards your team. But as you've highlighted, we have not seen a Phantom really find too much impact so far inside of these team fights. We'll see if Snake Hunters are able to utilize it here, as Team Joystick is already posturing for these Phoenixes.
That's a major confidence out of Sap as he walked forward pretty much by himself. Calvin, he was in the realm, but he was off in the jungle where Sap was by himself standing at tower line. You got to have quite a lot of confidence as a mid laner to be standing that far up.
Yeah, I'd say hubris at this point. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. Sap 7 has stricken fear into the hearts of the Snake Hunters, who are unwilling to step into him and unwilling to step into the entirety of Team Joystick, as again, so they start to push their way in towards this Phoenix. Tier 2 tower in mid has fallen, but no split push means that the wave is just going to sit there.
Bracer is dropped down. Sarpei finds Silence and tries to pull him back with no beads available for the Fafnir. He's not going to make it out. He leaps right back into the Blizzard. Sap able to pick up the first kill. Mogao is in the midst and has 3 locked around the cage. Rapio goes for the bat out of hell, but not going to find anybody. He's got to retreat. And Captain Oni, well, he tried to get into the midst, but he gets thrown right through the realms, and on landing will certainly be death.
It is death. Sap 7 credit for this one. Now only 3 members left of the Snake Hunters to defend.
Calvin tries to go for the pluck, but he gets caught out, and he'll die to the Phoenix immediately afterward. Pretty Prime getting credit for 1, and Rapio picking up another one as Sarpei goes a little too aggressive, and he will fall down. Looking at the Titan is Team Joystick, but not quite the best position for them to do so. Sap is very low.
Pretty Prime was CC'd out by the Unchained, but somehow makes it out of there. Rapio blinks forward, looks for the Screech, and does not find it. And E-Chrome being this healthy, I don't like the odds of the Snake Hunters taking a fight here, and the Snake Hunters don't seem to like their odds either. This Heimdall is a problem.
If Sap did not have his flicker up, that Screech would have slammed, and at this point probably would have killed him with how much damage that Rapio has online. Now finishing a Blood Forge, so when he does get those kills, a little bit of extra benefit getting that health shield. But now that they've stripped away 2 Phoenixes, they'll immediately set their sights towards Primal Fury, which will go down, well, just as quickly as they were able to walk towards it.
Man, Snake Hunters do their best to put up a defense there. I mean, Vapor's Coast Ultimate legitimately hit 5 people. 5 separate targets got stunned on the side of Team Joystick, but the deficit that they're playing into, the damage output from Pretty Prime wasn't quite there either, so Snake Hunters were not able to utilize the full potential of that CC chain, and instead immediately get separated inside of their own Phoenix. Generally, the game simplifies in a 5-on-5 defense engagement, but instead Team Joystick, by trading aggro, be it Lamogao going in deep, or Sarpei going in deep, or even Calvin doing it at points inside of that team fight, they were able to essentially rotating door which members of Snake Hunters that they wanted to fight. Team Joystick, that is. We're about 1 minute out till the Fire Giant respawns again, which means we're likely about 1 minute out from the next engagement from either one of these teams. Snake Hunters are in a very difficult position. They don't really have much of a base left to defend, and I don't think they can afford to put up with another Fire Giant siege, so I like this call from the Snake Hunters to immediately try and group up and see if maybe they can find a pick or put up a defense on this fire, because this next neutral objective, if it goes the way of Team Joystick, very likely spells the end of this game.
could be their last one. Sarpei recognizing that. He tries to zone the Snake Hunters away from even walking towards it, but Team Joystick, they're not as interested in the fire just yet. It hasn't spawned in, so they'll take what few moments they have left before that neutral comes up to strip away the last tower standing on the Snake Hunters side of the map. With 2 Phoenixes down, the fire minions are already starting to push deep into Snake Hunter territory. They're going to have to go back and start clearing those up. They send Rapio mid to try and deal with it, but instead of fire, Team Joystick may just be looking for their final Phoenix.
Yeah, if they can keep the pressure up here, I mean, you said it already, fire minion waves are starting to work their way in towards the base of the Snake Hunters, but Team Joystick were just posturing. They didn't want Snake Hunters to have the space to go ahead and clear out those left-hand camps, or left-hand waves, rather. So instead, group up on right and maybe set up an ambush.
Trying to go for the pincer instead. They'll just find Silence and Pretty Prime.
And Phantom.
You see the Phantom immediately go through. Pretty Prime, though, he's well under half health. Mogao trying to chase him out. Calvin lurking in the waters, but they're not going to find anything from it. The damage mitigation coming from that Phantom is paying dividends for them. The Rapio steps too far forward. One pluck right into Echrom's clutches, but Sap is also low. He'll fall down. And I'm surprised they didn't go for Calvin there. Calvin was so low, but Captain Odie, he's got other plans, looking for Mogao instead.
Yeah, Captain Odie wants to worry about his team and not the support instead. Peels back and helps out the boys. Snake Hunters just losing Rapio thanks to his late boosh beads there. Beads going golden inside of the air, but at the end of the day, we're able to keep their base alive just a little bit longer. That said, Team Joystick have got such a lead at this point, such an advantage on the map that they can immediately start to fall back and even keep threat up towards this enhanced Fire Giant.
Started up. It's just Echrome for the primary damage dealer of it, but it seems that he is more than enough for them as he's starting to chunk through. Silence and Captain Odie are going to try and stop this if they can. The Ring of Fire drops down. That'll be a disengage for Team Joystick. Too many members there to try and stop them.
Still 10 seconds left on Rapio, and Snake Hunter's base is getting absolutely destroyed, by the way. 50% HP on the Titan as of right now, and Echrome wants to keep going.
He's going to find Silence with the Through the Realms. Calvin is here on the drop down for him. Silence is well under half health now, and he has to leap away. Captain Odie charges out instantly to regroup with the rest of the Snake Hunters. Both Phoenixes have respawned, but there is still one more fire wave pushing up the left side and 2 more pushing up mid. They don't defend those. That Titan's not going to get any of that health back.
No, won't. Has to maintain all those Phoenixes for it to regen its HP, so Joystick make the correct play to just keep generating pressure, keep forcing the Snake Hunters to respond.
And that's exactly what they're doing. At least they're trying to, I should say. Silence, again, is so low in health. I don't even think he really had an opportunity to go back. And because of that, he may pay the ultimate prize, picked up by the jaws of the Ragnarok and stricken back down by Echrome. Calvin has to go away as quick as he can. He's down to a quarter health. Fire Giant picked back up by Team Joystick, and they'll be able to take that one down very quickly with the help of Sap.
50 seconds left on the Fafnir respawn. Vaporish Coast, no ultimate, no Tycho drums either. Hey, by the
Phoenix.
way, yeah, your base, it's not regenning HP anymore either. Left side Phoenix does fall. Team Joystick primed and ready to take out this Titan.
Only about a quarter health left on that Titan. That Phoenix is going to look even worse for wear as they walk in and immediately are able to shred it down with the help of Echrome. Now looking towards the mid to take the last Phoenix off the board and could be the last fight that the Snake Hunters have left in them.
They're taking it slow here. All 3 Phoenixes now remove. Team Joystick with no other options going into the base.
Calvin goes in with the pluck, finds Echrome, and it's just Mogao to try and deal with them. But Calvin is falling low, but the Titan even lower. Snake Hunter's not able to hold them out, and it's going to be game number 1 going to Team Joystick.
Team Joystick in a best-of-3 situation finds themselves 1 game of the lead, and that was... It wasn't like contentious. It wasn't back and forth. That was Team Joystick through and through. Going to need to see some adaptations, I think, and some heavy ones inside of P's and B's.
Yeah, just Snake Hunters not even really trying to fight back more than anything. They try and go for some kind of Fire Giant defense. Kind of a half-baked one, if you will, for it. Jump in, jump out, jump in.
Poorly executed, maybe. The plan was show up as 5. They were all there.
They were there,
it just didn't work.
But then no one was there to try and defend the Phoenixes. And, well, with that one, Team Joystick are able to get game number 1. We'll take it to a break, and then we'll come back with the desk.
A 33-minute game goes the way of Team Joystick behind some fantastic jungle and ADC play. And, of course, everyone else on the team was rolling there as well. If you've ever been interested, though, in joining the Smite esports community, now is your chance. We are looking, and I will use Rach's wording here, looking for some community-driven folks to join our Smite esports mod team. If you're interested in joining, please fill out the application in the tweet. And so Rach Esports is where you want to look on Twitter for the application. You can join the mod team. And whenever I join chat and make people start spamming ridiculous things, you can be the one responsible for dealing with that. Sorry. It's a joke. It actually is a lot of fun to be on the mod team. So check out Rach's Twitter for the application and all that. Gore, you have some thoughts on
you
it,
get to be responsible for all the polls. I see a lot of people being like,
That's
mods,
right.
where are the polls at? It's like, you can be
That's
in
right.
charge of it.
Plenty of polls. You can
There
be
you
in
go.
charge. That could be you. You could be the one.
Don't
making
overdo
polls.
it, though.
No, don't over. It's all about balance. And look, you learn on the job, right? I mean, day one, you probably throw up a few too many polls. Then you overcorrect and throw up no polls the next
I don't know
day.
that I've run a single poll in Smite Game Chat. I need to do that.
Maybe after this, Gordon, you and I will join chat after this desk, and we
Say
can
poll.
stick a poll.
Should
in.
I do another poll?
Should I do another
Yes,
poll?
no.
Yes, and then that just keeps going. Let's talk a little bit about what happens here in Game 1. We talked a lot about Vaporish Coast, the Snake Hunter, in the pregame desk there, and it was really E-Chrome here, Gore, on this Heimdall. That got unchained, and the rest of this game spiraled, as I like to say.
Fenrir's the Unchained. Unbound. Damn, I messed up. Either way, yeah, no, it was E-Chrome who was the one that really turned things around. Early on, it was a lot of Sarpé. In fact, it was going back and forth between these two teams for a while there. Rapia was keeping them in place, but it was actually this play. It's not just E-Chrome, although the lifesteal for E-Chrome really helps turn things around. Mogao comes back into the fight to help out here, and this really was the moment that kind of helped turn it around. With two frontliners, E-Chrome just had the time of his life. Used the Bifrost to get back into it. Gets those 3 kills, I think jumped up from like 2-1 to 5-1 all of a sudden, and then just continued that kind of presence throughout the rest of the game. A couple of moments where things maybe get a little too close. I think there are a lot of moments there towards the end for Joystick where they're not able to close it out the way they wanted to. That's one of those moments. After that pluck, they get the kill, but then they take a lot of damage in the process. But ultimately, didn't die throughout a lot of those and kept dealing the damage that was necessary.
8, 1, and 3 for E-Chrome. Nobody within 10,000 damage of the Heimdall in game number 1. In an uncharacteristic performance from Vaporish Coast. 27,000 damage. That's close to second top in the game.
10,100 damage below, by the way.
You're right. That's on me. I undersold it.
No, you said it. Nobody is within 10,000 of them.
You're right, but
they are within 10,100 of them.
Right. Spot on. But uncharacteristic from Vaporish Coast score. 0-7. Had 7 assists. But that's got to be the game plan, right? Because it feels like Coast is the one that has the performances that E-Chrome had in Game 1. And if you can keep Vaporish Coast in check, you have a good chance of winning the game. And that's exactly what Team Joystick did.
Mifflin had mentioned it when we jumped into the game, where it's just like, you know what? You got this stereotypical, exactly what E-Chrome wants. Plays this Heimdall, has been banned from him several times in the top 3 because of that kind of performance, what we just saw. But you let the Artemis through. Normally, that on its own should be the conversation ender, right? That should be Vaporish Ghost. But like you said, he was half the deaths they had, and so that means that they're going to have to change something up, whether it's banning the Heimdall or dealing with it another way. I don't know.
We will find out what Snake Hunters look to do here in Picks and Bans for game number 2. Granted, not all that is on Vaporish Coast, right? Artemis is immobile. Outside of Tusky, you don't really have a lot of great self-disengage unless you're really good at placing those traps. Seems like Coast was just chosen to die a whole lot this game between a Fenrir and an Odin cage and an Odin stun. It was just, let's keep this Artemis out of these fights. So not much I don't think Vaporish Coast could have done in game number 1. Similar bans, though, Gore. Sobek is going to be the big change here for Snake Hunters. The frontline solo lane presence still there in the ban column for Team Joystick. Don't think we're going to see any Tiamat today. And another change up here. Snake Hunters take the Fenrir off the table.
I actually really like both of these adjustments. I think they're both exactly in the right vein of conversation because, like you had said, look towards where Coast's problems were early on. This Odin is very problematic for an Artemis late game, but that's late game, right? You're an Artemis at that point. Who cares? Like, you're already there. But a Fenrir that was sitting on you, a Sobek that was continually finding plucks in your lane, that made things more troublesome. So they deal with the immediate problems. This is what got us behind to begin with. Now we can pivot that into a better composition for ourselves later on, and we took away 2 really, really pivotal things for Joystick that helped them out in the late game. I mean, we were just talking about how that helped out Echrome in that one turnaround, but also in the early game. I mean, both of those were pretty much their entire setup to keep up with Snake Hunters.
Gore, admittedly, and this is nothing to do with what you just said, so I'm sorry, I'm surprised that Artemis has a 25% win rate here. 8 games played, 25% win rate in the EU SCC, which I find intriguing. I guess at the SPL level thing, it's probably a little bit more stabilized, whether it's first pick or the second pick team that's picking it, probably closer to 50%. Could be totally wrong. I'll correct myself at some point in the future.
I can tell you.
But Team Joystick, they're going to stick with a lot of what worked in game 1, which notably is the Heimdall and the Odin. I have to keep my eyes on where the jungle pick comes down for Team Joystick, because that's where a lot of their early game pressure funneled through and what was able to get Echrome ahead here. Already like the pivots, though, from Snake Hunter. You keep Artemis. You get Gilgamesh and Yamoja, though, Gore, and you want to talk about frontline control. Those are 2 of the best to do it.
Yeah, I think that this is a very, very, very devastating composition Snake Hunters have been able to pick up. Over 50%, by the way. I don't know off the top of my head what percent 21 out of 36 is, but if you do that real fast, that's exactly what it is. I think that you get...
About 2/3.
Look, yeah, there you go.
Take
about
one off,
2/3.
take one off either, and you got 20 out of 30. Drop the zeros, 2 out of 3.
Sure. Quick math.
66.666 repeating.
Yeah,
Gore.
somewhere around there. Either way, Artemis, Gilgamesh, Yamoja is just such a powerful trio that, honestly, I'm not even sure it matters what your bottom 2 are going to be. I think those 3 should be able to guide a very solid game for you.
You want some damage, Gore? Did you order some damage?
With a side of damage.
With a side of damage. That's what Bastet's got for you. So Gore ordered it, and Team Joystick are delivering it to our table here. Discordia rounds out the draft. Admittedly, I think we got to talk about this Bastet before we talk about the draft entirely. Feels like there's one player, even at the SPL level, that I'm not scratching my head when Bastet gets locked in, and it's Scream. I'm going to be having nightmares of Mifflin poking his head in behind me for weeks here. Bastet, though, do you think it fits into the draft for Team Joystick?
I mean, she fits into the draft the only way that Bastet can, which is, okay, I expect you to do either a lot or a whole lot of nothing. Like, you are either going to be the reason that your team is winning because, like you said, the damage output is there, and you've got a good backline to at least keep you around, Khepri to try and res you in certain moments, but you're going up against Gilgamesh, or I'm sorry, no, you're going up against this Wheelish, so
yeah, right.
jungle pathing is going to be a little more interesting for you, but also there's a lot of frontline peel and healing on the side of Snake Hunters that will take some of that damage and turn it right back against you. So I really am worried about some of those mid to late game engages from this Bastet. If they don't get off to a good start, they might not get off at all.
Gore, does it feel like this Wheelix just has a great matchup? You got a Bastet that you can kind of pull. You got an Odin that's going to be doing a lot of jumping as well. There is a lot here for the Snake Hunters team to make a turnaround. Can the Snake Hunters turn things around here in game number 2 against Team Joystick? Go down to J-Mac and Mifflin to find out.
Kind of a tried and true classic Odin counter for a 10th selection for the Snake Hunters as they pick up that Wheelish off the back end. But I'm just surprised the fact that they were able to get not just Gilgamesh for this lineup, Mifflin, but they also managed to get a 3rd pick Yamoja going into this game. J-Mac Tucker and Mifflin with Doug on the camera for us as we go into game number 2 with Joystick and Snake Hunters.
Yeah, I think you're right to not bring up the Artemis. I know we went on a huge spiel last game about how she's kind of best in slot, but having watched Vapor's Coast Game 1, you might not believe that. I think it was like 0-6 to round out that game for the Artemis, and now goes back to it in Game 2, so I think Team Joystick very fine with letting that one fall through. Snake Hunters, by and large, have a phenomenal composition, be it the Gilgamesh, be it the counter pick that you already highlighted inside of the Wheelish out of the jungle. Pretty Prime has stripped away that Merlin pick from Sap. I think that Snake Hunters have very good tools to work with here, and very notably that Yamoja that you highlight. I think that a lot of the failings of the duo lane from Snake Hunters in Game 1 was rooted from their lack of lane clear. They were really struggling to match the pressure of Joystick, and, well, Yamoja can do a fair deal of it on her own.
You know, look, I'll give Vapors the benefit of the doubt. That was a composition designed to W-key at the Hunter with no regret or remorse, and they were able to successfully do so against Vaporish Coast time and time again in game number 1. Now they don't quite have that same level of it where they can, pick somebody up and bring them right back in. Instead, now they just got to deal with all the Phil Swift, a lot of damage that can come from Sarpei.
And Joystick still has a composition that can just dive onto Vaporish Coast, by the way. Sarpei on this Bastet's going to have a very easy time closing gap, and she doesn't really need to worry about her own life as Scare's Blessing is there as a safety tool, as a safety net inside of these team fights. And it's not just the Bastet, but Odin's still there. Cage going to be very hard for Artemis to deal with until a Phantom is selected on the side of Snake Hunters. I think that Team Joystick have a very similar execution draft as they did last time around. It's, can we shut down Vaporish Coast? Can we close gap on a Pretty Prime? And I'd say it's going to be easier this time to close gap on a Pretty Prime, as Thunderclap just straight up goes further than Flicker does. But I think that Snake Hunters, just power rankings, just tier list, have got such a strong composition that as long as they're able to make it to like the 25 to 30-ish minute mark that all European SCC teams aim for, with less than a 4,000 gold deficit, they should win the game off the merit of their draft alone.
One benefit that the junglers do have in game number 2 here is that they can actually both try and attempt to kill the enemy solo laner this time. You don't have Captain Odie basically being unkillable with the RDO, removing any obstacle that Sarpei may have had before him for it, or removing any chance that Sarpei may have had to go for a gank. And Rapio has a nice counter matchup against Moga, able to yank him back if he tries to go for the lead. Calvin goes for a pluck against Silence. The Gallarhorn will deal a lot of extra damage right back, but Calvin is the one who's looking a little worse for wear here as he takes well over 50% of his health. Instead, they'll turn their sights towards purple.
Yeah, here's the thing about Abduct. You better do it to Artemis or she's gonna Transgressor's Fate you. Now, Echrome might be learning that lesson the hard way.
He's got to use his beads to get to the Bifrost. Goes into lane, but it doesn't take him super far down the lane. Coast and Silence looking to close the gap. A couple of good basics and a Riptide from Silence will be good to get him back. He doesn't have his beads. He's trying to go for the boxing match against Coast, and so far it looks like he's winning.
Calvin dashes forward, tries to find the root, but is not quite lucky enough. Rapio, though, yeah, he's there.
Rotates in and gets the Feather Step for the kill. First blood goes the way of the Snake Hunters, and Calvin has to go back towards the tower. He had nothing left for his ally to try and peel him away from Rapio.
Pretty Prime in mid won't be able to make the rotation over, but luckily his team does not need him. Snake Hunters able to return the favor and strip away a purple buff from Team Joystick. And First Blood going to the jungler always feels good. Rapio, having ticked over to level 5 a little bit sooner than Sarpei has the opportunity that you were highlighting just a moment ago. Rotate over to the soul lane, and if Odin jumps, he's not going to get very far.
Man, if that Riptide hit, that would have very well been a dead Calvin, because Rapio had just hit 5 at that moment. Could have pulled him in with that gravity surge, but Calvin with a nice sidestep able to get away from the Riptide for the time being. Looking across for the builds here, Sarpei has gone for the Bumba's Dagger for a first item, where flip side we do see one more time that Eye of the Jungle locked in for Rapio. Tell me a little bit about the Bumba's Dagger that goes the way of this Bastet.
It's just good sustain in the early game. You've got decent level up options as well. I think it's just there to make sure that Sarpei is able to remain on the map for a long time as Chrome loses out on all of his HP, and I mean all of it. Vaporish Coast, credit for this one, and that's just an example of how that lane probably should have gone last time around. If you're going to sit inside of your Bifrost, yeah, Transgressor's Fate kind of just stops that, and it's the entirety of the size of your Bifrost. You're crippled, you're taking damage, and now Artemis is dealing additional damage because you're CC'd.
That hard CC chain from he had the stun that came from Silence, immediately followed by a Feather Step from Rapio, and that locks him in place for the Transgressor's Fate afterwards. So no opportunity for Echrome to get to that Bifrost. And what last game was a kill for Echrome and a couple for that thought as Vaporish Coast puts a second one on the board for himself, and now has to run away because he has no defense against Sarpei. Able to get a Transgressor's Fate, but the leap and the pounce is a little bit too much, and Sarpei able to return fire and get the Team Joystick on the board first.
Man, Vaporish Ghost is having a much better game this time around. I'm not just talking about the slash lines. I'm talking about the mechanical play. The play on field is looking a lot better from him. I mean, these traps have been on point. He's been looking for the solo aggression already, has been able to make his stamp known on this match, and not falling behind this early on means that he can likely just stick around inside of this lane on his own. Last time around, Snake Hunters had to leave Silence inside of the dual lane just to make sure that Echrome wasn't accosting Vaporish Coast at every given moment of the match. I don't think you have to have that concern, not this time.
Rapio going for another purple invade, was looking towards Echrome, but recognizing he doesn't have much kill effectiveness because they do have those purification beads back online, so Echrome could get away and use that Bifrost this time around. So instead, they'll just strip the purple, and Echrome will make sure to take his own single Alpha Harpy so he can get at least a little bit of experience for himself.
Yeah, and already we're seeing so much emphasis from the Snake Hunters on this dual lane. Maybe it's iSilence just likes to play with his ADC as he is still hovering inside a duo. Meanwhile, Calvin is kind of working his way all the way around the map, going back to base, rotating towards mid, just making sure that his pressure is evenly split. But all that time spent rotating has put him at a slight deficit. Calvin, 5 to iSilenced 6, but that has cut into Vaporish Coast's lead as well. You got to think that Coast should probably be up like about an entire level, but instead he's down a bit in terms of XP. Echrome just not splitting as much as this Artemis is.
You got to think after game number 1, where Vaporish Coast was the primary target for everybody on Team Joystick here, making sure to keep that Hunter, you probably do want to give him just a little bit of extra hand-holding earlier on, but when you get 2 kills on the board at that point, maybe time for Silence to rotate out and try and help elsewhere across the map. Pretty Prime, he's gone back and gotten his Chronos Pendant for his first item locked in one more time. Charon's Coin was his second item in game 1. We'll see if he follows suit. And Rapio looking for Mogao, but he'll be able to leave right out of the cage, as well as Captain Odie trying to get away, but Sarpei and Mogao are here. Mogao gets pulled back in with the Gravity Surge. Drop kick doesn't find anybody. Sarpei gets bounced against the walls, and Odie and Rapio both able to make it out with their lives.
Rapio takes a lot of damage there. I wonder, had Sarpei used the ultimate, if he just finds that kill off the raw damage output, considering how low Rapio does fall. But that is Snake Hunters trying to set up for a blue buff invade. Rapio a little bit off on the timer, gives time for the rest of Team Joystick to start to rotate over themselves, and with Calvin and Sarpei in range, that fight always going to go the way of Team Joystick. Snake Hunters wisely decide to retreat towards their own tower, and that Gravity Surge from Rapio actually changes the entire engagement. Had Lamogao been allowed to find that damage from the Bird Bomb, gotta think both members, solo lane and jungle, for Snake Hunters would have fallen there. Heads up play from Rapio.
Now Pretty Prime and Sap both sitting level 10, both with their first full items, looking for early skirmishes. Silence, because he spent so much time with Coast, he does have a little bit of an extra lead over Calvin as far as experience goes, about a half level their way, and a few extra stacks with that Gauntlet of Thieves. Also now looking towards possibly a Lotus Crown for his second item to give a little bit of extra protection when he gets those heals off.
A little extra protection, excuse me, as well as damage. Going forward for iSilenced. I mean, this is just standard Yamoja stuff here. I mean, this is exactly what the majority of the SPL players are building when they like to go for this god. So I think it makes perfect sense. And he's going to have so much pressure now onto these squishy frontliners of Team Joystick. Sarpei is going to be very easy to shut down. I mean, now Yamoja is legitimately a threat towards this Bastet. And as long as he's able to keep his life and keep his Omi stacked up here, should be able to put up a pretty formidable defense on this red buff. And just by showing face, Team Joystick decide not to show up.
Mogao knocked up by the Jaguar and immediately taken back down. Featherstep doesn't get Rapio out of the cage, and Mogao will be able to walk out thanks to it. The Winds of Shamash expended as well. So 2 ultimates going for Mogao, but unsuccessful in grabbing him with either.
Sarpei now is starting to make his rotation over, but a little bit too little too late. Team Joystick not in time to defend the Totem of Ku, so Snake Hunters credit for this one. Everyone could be getting a little bit of additional mana regeneration across the map, and why not utilize that pressure to move yourself in towards a greater Scorpion? And Deja Vu from here, Step 7, trying to get aggressive in mid, is plucked back in, but no aggression for Pretty Prime means he walks out of there, with both teams taking a subdued pace to this match, as European SCC is apt to do. You got to evaluate the late game, and I think I said it last time around as well. Late game goes the way of Snake Hunters.
Echrome cancels out the Caledonian Boar by dashing in with his own ultimate, but he misses Vaporish Coast in the process. Even if he did get him, the CC immunity would have made sure to keep him alive for that time. So, ultimate for ultimate out of the Hunters, and that leaves both of them a little bit more susceptible for ganks, as we see both supports rotating towards that left side of the map. And, well, as far as solo lane goes, this is about what we'll expect for the next few minutes of these laners.
Yeah, Echrome just hit Vaporish Coast for 207 with his first auto attack. That is a sizable chunk of damage at this portion of the game, probably due to all that power he's gotten from the Transcendence. That said, it was deceptive. The damage output that he has in the 1v1 is not going to be that high all the time because of Vaporish Coast's itemization. The Ichabale going to be able to strip away some of that power once he's able to actually channel some of those auto attacks. That was an ultimate trade in the Hunter role. Both ultimates, Heimdall and Artemis, are expended, which means that both are a little bit more susceptible to ganks going forward. Keep your eyes on these junglers. Got to think at least one of them is going to try and exploit that.
And interesting to note that that Echrome didn't go for any crit in game number 1, yet he was topping the damage charts by the end stages of the game. I'll see if he goes back for it. Calvin gets pulled in with the ultimate, has to use his own just to try and stay alive a little bit longer, but the River's Rebuke will be more than enough to make sure he falls down. Pretty Prime gets the credit with the fire. Sarpei spends their ultimate as well, but not able to find anything with it. They just lose their support.
What an expensive kill for a support as well. That was Gravity Surge, it was Rivers Rebuke, Pretty Prime just drops like 4 abilities onto him as well. All of that means that the Snake Hunters, despite finding a pick right next to the Gold Fury, 4-man grouped, can't actually go for the Gold Fury itself, especially considering how low HP Rapio is at this point. Lamogal, though, hovering, might be looking for a blue buff invade.
Look, at this point of the game, if you can kill that Khepri, I don't care what it takes. Just get rid of him, get that Scarab's Blessing off the board, because once that late game comes through, that's going to be even more of a nuisance to try and deal with. I mean, you try killing somebody and then having to kill them again because Scarab's Blessing comes through. It's not a fun time.
Yeah, I've definitely tried, and it was not fun. But already, I'd say that Snake Hunters have done a very good job of making sure that Calvin is falling behind inside of the early game. It's close to a level and a half for Ice Silenced. We just now see Calvin tick over to 9. Ice Silenced been sitting comfortably at 10 for a little while now. Might actually level up on this wave as well. So I would like to see Snake Hunters try and push their lead in the early game a little bit here. I mean, take a peek at the slash lines. 4 and 1. 4 to the Chaos team, 1 to the Order, and gold disparity does not exist. And that's because despite finding picks, Snake Hunters have only done that. It's just picks. It hasn't been a Pyro. It hasn't been a Gold Fury. We haven't seen a concentrated effort towards any of these permanent objectives either.
Sarpei blinks in, finds Rapio, leaps in the midst, has to use the beads as soon as they try and leap away because Rapio expends the Gravity Surge, and Rapio still looking for more. Goes in with the Jaguar and the Feather Step over the wall, but not enough damage to take out Sarpei. That Scarab's Blessing keeps him alive, but it doesn't help Calvin at all, who's stuck in the middle of 4.
So that's 4 healthy members of Snake Hunters on the left-hand side. Captain Odie has vision on Lamogal at 50% HP, and still no attempt towards this Gold Fury, despite having a phenomenal composition for burning objectives at this point in the game. Pretty Prime, having already got the Chronos Pendant and the Soul Gem, would shred the Gold Fury. So I like what I'm seeing now. Finally, the Chaos team starting to work their way over towards this neutral objective and force Team Joystick to make a rotation in.
Hey, they heard you. They said, okay, you know what, you want a Gold Fury? We'll go for a Gold Fury. They used the River's Rebuke a little bit early. Gold Fury's still sitting fairly healthy. Echrome going to try and take this one away, and they do manage to sneak at him, and Sap able to steal that Fury away. Snake Hunter's just a little slow on that rotation and burn.
Yeah, early River's Rebuke and poor confirmation means that Team Joystick, from what would have been a massive spike in favor of Snake Hunters, from a 4 versus 5 position, are able to equalize this game yet again and actually put themselves in the lead, both experience and gold, despite only having 1 kill to their collective name as a team, as opposed to the Snake Hunters 5. Unfortunate. Maybe that's why they weren't going for the Gold Fury.
Maybe so.
It's just hard to do. It's a difficult situation to find yourself in.
It's all about the stuff after the stuff. That's kind of the point. You get the kills, now what do you get after the kills? And Snake Hunters, they take too long to go for that secondary benefit after getting a nice pick. Because of that, Team Joystick able to walk in and just take the Gold Fury from right under their nose, using everything a little too early. You got to save some of that damage to try and burn down that Gold Fury for the back end. Sure, burning it is the first step, but what kind of secure do the Snake Hunters really have to take that away? Well, they got Feather Step. That's decent base damage, but you've also got Sap who can just throw something over the wall like a Strife or an Unruly Magic that deals equivalent damage at this stage of the game. Looking at these Fire Giant Snake Hunters are going to have to be a little bit more careful if they want to go for it and be a little bit more calculated with their burns.
Yeah, I'd argue that instead of using River's Rebuke on the Gold Fury itself, or maybe waiting a little bit longer, could have been nice. Instead, should have probably sent Ice Silence forward to try and zone a little bit or get vision on people coming in, so you know whether or not you need to hold on to your confirmation. Instead, Team Joystick were allowed a red carpet rolled out for them and said, all right, walk in. We're going to out-confirm you, and, well, Snake Hunters didn't. And that means that Team Joystick benefiting mightily from the pace of the game so far. But I said it earlier, Snake Hunters have such a strong late-game composition that as long as they are able to remain equal in farm or even slightly behind, I'd give them come into the next 6 minutes with a 4,000 gold deficit. I'm probably still favoring Snake Hunters because of just the pacing of the European SCC, just because of how strong their composition is. I think that Snake Hunters are just fine with the pace right now. Would they have preferred to have gotten that Gold Fury?
Well, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
but,
who wouldn't?
It's not backbreaking, where the Chaos team is sitting pretty at this point.
And 1,000 gold at 15 minutes is basically nothing at this stage. It was 20 minutes in last time we saw a, 2,500 gold lead. So, yeah, being down 1,000, not the end of the world for it. Gold loss, a little bit of experience for it. At least it keeps the match interesting for them. Maybe that's it. You know what? You're like, maybe let's have a little bit more fun this game. Keep it interesting. Make them think that they've got what it takes here, and then maybe we kind of beat them up a little bit later for it.
Could be the strategy there. I doubt it is, but it
Probably
could
not,
be
but
the strategy for Snake Hunters.
the
I
mind
wouldn't put
games.
it past them. Yeah, mind games certainly have one, a smite set or two, but as of right now, both teams spinning their wheels. No neutral objectives being looked at. Pyromancer, the only one that's feasible at this point of the game, and towers aren't being grouped up on. Instead, both teams vying and jockeying for position around these mid camps, and well, Sap7 has proven on the Gold Fury and now on the mid camps again that he has got the superior confirmation.
What an annoying triple Riptide against Calvin. He gets locked in the midst of it. River's Rebuke will crash down and will pop that Scarab's Blessing, but waiting for him immediately after is a stun. Leap in from Sarpé, finds two, throws the cats to get two on Pretty Prime, has to use the Aegis immediately, and Pretty Prime is able to make it out.
He is, but it was very expensive to make it out there. Aegis being used means that next time Sarpé's got the ultimate, Pretty Prime likely won't have those Aegis available, and probably likely won't have his life available to him much longer after that one. Team Joystick are going to lose their support there in exchange for the mid camps. That's a hefty trade, but maybe one Sap7's happy to make. Supports really are just there to make sure that your carries are pulling ahead, and Sap7's doing just that. 2-level lead over Pretty Prime in mid.
Now they'll set their sights over towards Pyromancer, and that'll be a quick objective here for Snake Hunters. Well, I say quick, it's taking them a little bit longer to get there. Rapio will be able to drop it with the help of Silenced. Rotating over. Pretty Prime in mid, sitting a little low, and they're looking for some action here on this left side of the map. Both relics available for Vapor's Coast, and he's going to need both of them to try and get away, or at least just the beads. Aegis will be expended on the tail end of it. Echrome puts in quite a lot of damage, but they get not just both relics, but they also get the ultimate away from Vaporish Coast.
So now Sarpé is like a kid in a candy store. The second his ultimate is back and available and ready to be used, he's got two primary targets that he can go for. I mean, Pretty Prime with no Aegis and just having a flicker for escape, pretty easy for Bastet to deal with that, or maybe just head on over and do what worked for him last game and try and shut down Vaporish Coast.
Wasn't the cheapest get for them either, though. As you do see, Sarpé lost both of their relics, Blink and Beads expended to try and get that. So yeah, they strip away everything from Vaporish Coast, but it costs Sarpé just about everything besides their ultimate in order to do so. Interestingly enough, though, Mogao is going for a Gauntlet of Thieves of his own, trying to get a second form of aura on the team for themselves. They already have one fully stacked Thieves, but is this just because Mogao is going to be more frontline, and then they're kind of expecting Calvin to be more towards the backside of the fight?
Mogao's a weirdo, man.
He is.
If I had to guess, but with how Odin plays inside of these team fights, if you're really trying to group up around the cage, just making sure that everyone's benefiting from a Thieves aura at all times could be pretty nice. I mean, if we're going to have Calvin sitting in the back line all the time, that means that Mogao can at least help out Sarpé with some tankiness. I like it.
Primal started, and Primal leashed immediately. Sarpé throws a cat out and gets a little bit of damage in the middle of the Snake Hunters. Mogao, all by himself, has to leap away from Captain Odie. We'll make sure to try and zone the solo laner away, both sitting level 18 and fairly equal as far as their build pathing goes, minus one Warrior's Axe there. It's the only thing that isn't picked up by Mogao comparatively as far as build goes. But just as quickly as everybody said, hey, let's try and go for this Primal Fury, everybody decides, well, you know what? Maybe now's not the time to go for it.
And as you say that, Snake Hunters regroup and pull it back out yet again. Sarpé, though, has perfect vision on this and is letting his team know, hey, it's burning, but it's burning slow. You got time. Just make sure you start walking over soon.
It's only sitting at half. The only person really dealing damage is Vaporish with the basics. Pretty Prime is not wasting any abilities onto it, holding on to it for the team fight. Instead, everybody from the Snake Hunters again will back away and try and regroup, strip away some of the farm that's available for them. Red buff picked up by Pretty Prime as that was dropped in the process. Mogao walking forward to find Odie, but he'll leap away because the root out of Calvin is going to make sure that he needs to get out.
Mogao doing his best to create some space around the Fury itself. Team Joystick finally are rejoined by Echrome. And with no wards available means that if they do pull the gold free, and they do, they're doing it with complete vision of Snake Hunters.
Down well under half health. Pretty Prime is not going to be able to get there in time at all to help them out as he got zoned by the cage from Mogao. Primal Fury goes away of Joystick. Mogao has to use beads to get out of the gravity surge. River's Rebuke is good, but Scarce Blessing makes sure that Mogao has more than enough to get out through the realms. Popped on just one, and as soon as Captain Odie lands, it's not going to matter for them. Rapio able to find Sap in the process. Sarpé falling low and falling down. Vapor's Coast gets the kill.
Unfortunate timing for Sarpé, who uses the pounce on Rapio in ultimate stance immediately as Rapio uses Feather Step, so none of that damage rings true. Had he connected it onto the Awilish, likely changes this fight.
Echrome, you are playing with fire, my friend. Luckily for him, he does have Bifrost, and that'll get him out of the flames, but walking up very aggressively when there's still 2-3 people standing around, probably not the choice I would make there.
Hey, that's the play that won them the game last time around on the Fire Giant. It was around this phase of the match as well, so you gotta think Echrome is just trying to tie up his cape and turn around a bad situation. That said, Team Joystick, despite losing out on 2 of their members, come out dead even off of that engagement, actually losing out on their gold lead and maybe losing their support as well. Vaporish Coast just walks them down. Calvin just gets bopped there, and now Snake Hunters for the first time this game are aggressing onto one of these towers. Tier 1 falls expeditiously.
They lose the Fury, but they are able to pick up, well, 3 kills here on the tail end of it with Calvin and a Tier 1 tower, and now have turned towards the Fire Giant as that's their next objective. And look where everybody from Joystick is on the map. The only person anywhere near them is Mogao, and by the time he gets over, he's going to notice maybe a little too late. He avoids the dropkick from Captain Odie. Fire Giant falling low. Mogao wants to get in there for the seal. He's going to have to time this lead perfectly, but doesn't even go for it. Instead, he'll have to drop the cage. Captain Odie going to try and lock him down inside the winds, drop kicks him against the wall, and Mogao is just trying to survive for as long as he can, but that length is not very long.
It isn't. What are Snake Hunters going to do with this lead? Captain Odie headed back to base. Pre-Prime goes to collect the wave, and everybody else decides to hit the tower. Meanwhile, on the other side, Team Joystick maybe seeing if they can keep a push up on a Tier 2. It's just Echrome, and I like Echrome's odds in a 1v1 against Odie with no ult.
Echrome took a little while before he wanted to go for the tower. Made sure that there was a commit. The drop kick is good from Odie to stun him out, but the Tier 2 tower is already gone. Instead, Snake Hunters, they'll take Tier 2 in solo lane, then back away to grab Pyromancer before they make their swift retreat back towards base.
Hey, I'm going to revise a line from Game 1,
okay,
and it's going to be verbatim. 2,000 gold separates these two teams at the 23-minute mark, and this is the largest bit of separation we've seen so far, as is apt for the European SCC. Snake Hunters finding themselves closer to 1,500 gold in the lead, experienced largely the same, 1,500 in favor of the Chaos team. What is different this time around is that Fire Giant is on the belts of 5 members, and Snake Hunters, with a very strong late-game composition, are coming into it with a lead themselves. 3 towers still stand between them and the exposed birds of Team Joystick, and Joystick's defense is nothing to scoff at. They've got good damage, they've got good dive potential, but I think it all comes down to Sarpé. If Sarpé is able to close gap and deal with at least one of the priority targets on the side of Snake Hunter, and that is Pretty Prime and Vaporish Coast, that should spell a good defense for Team Joystick. So what does that mean for the Snake Hunters? Survive that dive, and you likely win the fight after.
Looking at the Tier 2 tower in the left side of the map is the members of Snake Hunters with all 5 players here. They will very easily be able to take that one down. It will fall rather quickly for them. Now, all that stands between them is one more Tier 2 tower from mid lane, or they can start looking at this left side Phoenix, which is where the primary bulk of their players are. Prime and Coast will team up with Silence to try and deal some damage to it, but having a rough time making their way in.
Rapio takes a 1v1 up against Sarpé in the jungle, lose out on half his HP, but Rapio also benefiting from a Fire Giant and having a Yamoja on his team should be able to sustain back up, is what I would have said if Sarpé were not simply better. Rapio falls, and that's a large bit of the siege potential lost.
Yeah, see, about that sustain, it's good unless they're putting out too much damage for that sustain to make up. Instead, it'll be Sarpé getting a solo kill against Rapio, and now looking towards more. Calvin caught inside the River's Rebuke, gets bounced back against the wall, uses the ultimate just on himself as Captain Odie drops the winds looking for Sap. Sap is low and gets drop kicked right against the wall to take him down. Captain Odie gets one pick and making a second one as Coast grabs Calvin.
Yeah, Team Joystick forgot that they were playing into a Fire Giant team. It seems like Sarpé gave his boys an emboldening passive as he finds that pick and baits the rest of Team Joystick into a bad position.
Well, that ultimate from Echrome may have just saved his life. That dropkick was incoming, and Sarpé leaps right back into the pull from Pretty Prime. That's 3 down for the Team Joystick, and it may be enough for Snake Hunters to try and push in towards this base.
Here's the thing about Bastet Jump. We know where you're going on the way back, and Pretty Prime has been playing this game for a long time. Easy pick for the Merlin.
Mogao low. Mogao leaps back towards the Phoenix, but that's only Well, not even a safe haven for him as he gets shredded instantly. E-Chrome trying to fight into the midst of 4, has to use his own Bifrost to get away. But the Titan is the primary target for Snake Hunters. They've taken it down to half. Calvin has respawned. Dropkick from Odie misses, but it doesn't matter because the Titan will fall down. Snake Hunters able to bring out game number 2 and take us to a game number 3.
Game 3 situation. I'd argue that this game was not as convincing as the last one. It was dead even until the exact 22-minute mark, until we saw a Fire Giant fall. But up until that point, I mean, we'd argue that they were looking for that point of the game. They had such a strong late-game composition, and finally, in the late, utilize it for their first team fight.
That Fire Giant immediately picked up, and although utilize it to its fullest extent early on in the game, Snake Hunters able to pick up game number 2 and take us to game 3, and we'll bring it back to the desk right after this break.
Gotta take off my jacket for this one. Oh, dude, this. No, I know he was supposed to take you out last weekend, but he got busy.
first matchup of the day is going all 3 games. Snake Hunters able to answer back here in Game 2 after suffering a tough Game 1 loss. And you better believe that all of these players are at home playing on the most comfortable mouse pads around. And if you are in the market for a new mouse pad, a really big old mouse pad that is Smite branded, now is your time. The SPL mouse pad is back. Furnished, of course, by our friends at Inside Apparel. You got all of the roles down the left side, all of the teams down the right side, and I believe that is at shop.smiteproleague.com where you can head for a SPL branded mouse pad of your own. And here's the good news, Gore. I've got one here. Not only is it a mouse pad, it's so big. What do they call those guys who do the bullfighting?
Matador.
Matador. You could be a matador. If you're having a messy dinner, it's a good bib. And it's a cape if you're trying to fly around.
I do think it also comes in smaller sizes.
You're right. There were a whole list of sizes. There were a whole list of sizes on the graphic there that I chose to ignore. Plenty of sizes, but a really cool mouse pad nonetheless. Matador bib. Although Edna Mode told us no capes.
Yeah,
so I was wrong.
So don't
You're
worry.
not allowed. Yeah, no capes because
you'll get caught in the jet of a not a helicopter, an airplane, and get
that is
torn
a
to
fancy
shreds.
Helicopter, Gore. If it's got one of those. Let's talk
what is
about
that, the VTOLs, the vertical takeoff and landing.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Pivot there.
Yeah.
Propellers?
I think you're right.
Yeah.
That sounds neat, whatever it is. But I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called, but I trust you with my life score, so I'll believe you here on this one. Let's talk about Game 2, though. Snake Hunters, they remedy a lot of what goes wrong in Game 1.
Mm-hmm.
Actually just kind of flipped the script entirely, where it feels like in Game 2 here, the jungle and the ADC for Snake Hunters kind of ran away with things.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this Awelish pick ended up being something that worked out much more favorably to them, not just having, first off, a much better performance. It's kind of, I want to say, difficult. It would be difficult not to have a better performance for Coast here on the Artemis. He was, 0-7 the first time around, so even just getting a kill was bar none better for them. But I think he was able to have a much more solid duo lane performance, and that transitioned well into the late game. Didn't get sat on anywhere near as much. Banning the Sobek and that Fenrir really helped him out just in regards for the carry. But then you also had to look at what Rapia was able to do, and this is actually triple just better for them. I mean, E-Chrome would have trouble getting away because you have to wait patiently for that Bifrost to get through, but Sarpei and Mogao are easy pulls every single time, plus you've got a Riptide to set you up. Yep. I mean, it just felt like no matter what, this jungle pick was going to be able to find some success. You got to see it take off a lot quicker, but follow a much better trajectory throughout the game here in game number 2.
Calvin was kind of getting sat on here this game. 0-7 was the Khepri. And that's unfortunate because you're using the Scarab's Blessing on yourself most of the time then, so you didn't at least have that utility in a lot of those fights. So the target was Calvin early and often. The game snowballed from that point on. Pretty prime. Did 4,000 or 5,000 damage more than Sap there as well, but the big turnaround here for Vaporish Coast, 21,000 damage. That's top in the game, 8,000 higher than E-Chrome over there on the other side. So now an all-important Game 3, Gordon. If we go back to the standings, very important for both of these teams to get a win here. If Team Joystick want to solidify their spot in the top 2, just behind Elysium, this is the game to do it. If Snake Hunters want to separate themselves from that 1-3 pack down at the bottom of the standings, this is the game to do it. And that's why it's so intriguing to me that Snake Hunters is 1-3, because they put on games like this, and I can't believe that they've only won one game here so far. And you talk about momentum in situations like this. Snake Hunters, after winning Game 2, might have that extra edge here going into Game 3.
I think if they stick to similar bans as they just had in Game 2, then they're probably going to be able to pivot into a similar draft. But that's where some of the problems come through. Bastet really played well into your hand if you're Snake Hunters in the last game.
Yeah, it worked.
There's a good chance that Joystick won't go back to it.
Agora, let's answer some of those questions. Let's do a picks and bans for Game 3. We'll have in store for us here. Remember, it's been a lot of Kulkullen, a lot of Osiris, a lot of Tiamat bans for Team Joystick, who seem destined to be picking from this first pick slot all set long. And then Snake Hunters have loved banning out this Hell. I remember we saw, I think it was Sap that we saw some pregame highlight reels around for Team Joystick that really performs well on this Hell out of the mid lane. So maybe makes some sense that Snake Hunters just don't want to deal with it here. And then it was the pivot in Game 2 from Snake Hunters where you start banning out the Sobek, you start banning out the Odin, and things really worked out there. So a slight difference now for Team Joystick, or the Emoja won't be available.
And I think this is trying to strip away some of what tore them apart. They've been going for the Odin first pick every single time. I wouldn't be surprised if, hey, guess what, they do it again. But that left open the Artemis, that left open the Emoja, it leaves open a ton of those phenomenal picks that we see pivoted. The Gilgamesh as well was somebody that was in the conversation last game. And so I think that's something that they had to think about, which was what was really causing us trouble. That a Wheelish was bad because of Odin and Bastet, but it got worse because the Riptides that were on their side. And so I really like the way they pivoted, at least that last pick.
Artemis and Fenrir. So it was Fenrir that kind of tore this Artemis apart in Game 1. So I think that this is a smart pivot for Snake Hunters. You get the Artemis still, which Vaporish Coast looked great on in Game 2. But then you take away what was so important for Team Joystick in keeping that Artemis down in Game 1, which is this Fenrir. So I think it's a fantastic kind of 1-2 punch here for Snake Hunters. The answer back, though, is Athena and Chernobog. There's a lot of global pressure there, Gore, so that's something Snake Hunters are going to have to take into consideration.
Chernobog in and of himself is just good for rotations, good at boxing as well. I think it's going to be fun to watch that matchup in the duo lane. Yep. But I also have to throw it way back to the beginning of the picks and bans for Game 1. This Athena was taken out in the top 3 by Snake Hunters, so I'm excited to see what Joystick are going to be able to bring in because they didn't pick it up last time. And so she should be, in my mind, stronger than the Khepri, depending on how you're trying to play it. Khepri found himself, as you had said, ulting himself constantly, trying to keep himself alive. Athena will die in a lot of the same scenarios, might not be able to make it out, but will at least pull you into a bad position doing so. So I think there's a lot of good setup. It's just how they close it out.
Man, poor Sap is just... The second wave of bans for Snake Hunters all set long. It's just been Baba Yaga and Morgan. And Team Joystick... Granted, I think this speaks to the flexibility of the god pool of Sap. Team Joystick, with knowing that and the way the bans have been going, aren't concerned about getting Sap something in the first 3 picks. They're fine having Sap on something that is not the Baba Yaga or the Morgan. Bastet again, Gore. After the difficult game that it had in game number 2, is doing a Wheelix around, but with a Fenrir and Gilgamesh, you'd assume that jungle role was filled there, but both of those can kind of flex as opposed to a solo lane or support. So it'll be a Khepri, to round out the draft.
And I actually like that because it is calling that bluff, right? Like, Fenrir support, Gilga solo, then you pick up a Wheelish to throw into your jungle. Like, you really would have a much squishier team, nowhere near as solid a frontline as you have, as of now, with a Gilgamesh Fenrir plus a Khepri. But that makes it a lot easier for this Bastet to just exist and survive, and so you're still going to be able to find a lot of good leaps. You don't have to worry about the counterplay. It's same thing for the Odin. You don't have to worry about the counterplay. And admittedly, Fenrir is going to have a tough time trying to find targets. Chernobog has pretty good disengage alongside the Athena keeping him safe, and Zhonghui is just kind of a big boy. He's difficult to burn through on your own.
I think we got to talk about the Zhonghui, right? Because at the SPL level, it's seen very limited success. It has won some games, but it's seen limited success. Oftentimes, it feels like the Zhonghui in a W key composition can do well, and that's what Team Joystick have here. Going into game number 3, the all-important tiebreaker, game number 3, Team Joystick versus Snake Hunter starts right now.
And right now, well, maybe a little bit later down the road, we'll see which of these two teams is able to pull out the Game 3 victory for themselves. Going to a Zhonghui after the performance that Sap's had in the last couple of games, probably not the god I would have picked for him here. J-Mac Tucker joining me as Mifflin and Doug one last time for this set at the very least for it. It's Team Joystick are looking to creep back in here and take Game 3, but Snake Hunters, they're trying to play gatekeeper for it.
Joystick have tripled down on this aggressive composition now. The dive is incorporating the mid laner. Sap7 is going to be walking along the front line shoulder to shoulder with the warriors that are Lamogao and Sarpei. We're practicing the Bushido code on the order side. All wounds on the back are a mark of weakness. Meanwhile, Snake Hunters are, well, they're weak. They're showing a lot of backline focus. Pretty Prime and Vaporish Coast are going to require the peel of Eye Silenced inside of every single team fight, so it's up to Samurai Warriors, Captain Odie, and Rapio to control the early game here. Odie likely going to be left on an island, as Soul Laners seem to have been in the last 2 games. So maybe it's just up to Rapio to get the early game pace rolling for the Snake Hunters.
Feels like maybe a bit of an oversight here, giving Rapio the Fenrir this time around. I mean, great performance on it Game 1 out of Sarpei, I believe, who is the one who had that for it. So very curious the fact they just kind of let a Fenrir go by the wayside, especially compared to what he was able to do in game number 1. We'll see where Rapio elects to take his build. We've been seeing a lot more of the Bruiser style come out of this Fenrir.
Yeah, recently it really has been that, but Rapio jumps in and maybe a little too far forward. The dash missed from Sarpei, but first blood still going to go the way.
And an early bead to try and get rid of the slow that came immediately afterwards, but that's going to be the first fall of the game. Team Joystick on the board early. Sap with this Zhonghui. Gets a nice assist to boot with it and going for a rather interesting route with it. Going for the Sands of Time compared to a Vamp Shroud.
Yeah, some early CDR. What is Rapio doing there, man? Can't be jumping in against Bastet and Zhonghui at level 2, especially with something like a Merlin to back you up. Gotta wait a couple of levels so that Merlin is able to really do some damage, find some CC, help you out inside of these engagements. Rapio's entire plan was, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to find the stun, and hopefully that kills him. And it didn't, and well, we saw what happened on the tail end. Bastet actually misses the leap, and it does not matter, J-Mac. The damage output was still there.
Yeah, the slow that came from Sap was what initially forced the beads away from Rapio, but beads don't save you from damage. That card was still ticking. The dot from the lash was still ticking away at his health bar. Just CC is not really the call for Team Joystick's composition necessarily. Well, they do have Calvin. That's going to provide, well, a decent single major CC with that taunt, but otherwise it's just raw damage output coming especially from these two on the side of Joystick between Sarpei and Sap.
It's all a lot of pick-based CC besides the taunt that you already highlight. Confound, still for my money, one of the best non-ultimate abilities in the game, especially now that it deals damage as well. But you got a root from Bastet, you got a stun from Odin, you got a root from E-Chrome as well. So if anyone on Snake Hunters is caught slipping inside of the jungle, they're going to get punished pretty quickly. Or if they're slipping in lane, they'll get punished quickly as well, as we've already seen highlighted by an early fall from Rapio. And now Team Joystick with a team fight-based composition. Once they're grouped up as 5, that's going to be the main strength of this order side team. Have already established themselves a sizable early game lead. And it's only about 1,000, but 3 minutes in, that's a lot.
Hey, you don't got to worry about diminishing returns on your CC if you don't have that much of it. Just go for the straight damage. Now, you know what? We'll make sure that that taunt lasts the entire duration if those beats are down. We'll make sure that that root holds them in place forever, or that stun that may come out from Sap. Looking towards late game is where really both of these teams are likely to shine with it. The Bastet may fall off a little bit, she'll still have a lot of damage, but that's when Zhonghui will be nice and tanky-er, I should say, unless he goes for an actual tank option for it. Normally we've been seeing things like a Warlock Sap as a first item, but instead Sap is going for Penetration as a first option.
Yeah, maybe Spear of Desolation for additional CDR. I'm excited to see how he elects to build this one out. Maybe even a Void Stone if he's just feeling kind of wild. I'm excited. Either way, Sap 7 going for an unorthodox build here on the Zhonghui. Rapio, though, hovering on this left side jungle. Thought about maybe working his way over, but Sarpei spots him out.
Level 5 from E-Chrome and Calvin may be looking towards Coast, as he has not hit that level 5 just yet. Calvin will get the taunt only against Silence, and a follow-up root from E-Chrome will put him down about 30% of his health or more. And they'll be going back towards the Tier 1 tower. Sarpei rotates over, but Rapio keeps him at bay in the jungle, making sure he doesn't go too aggressive towards that side of the lane. Sarpei will return a little bit of fire back at him, but instead of a Spear of Desolation, it's going to be a Spear. The mage is picked up by Sap, first item.
That's some decent lifesteal, which is going to turn itself into survivability. Penetration going to be good as well. Applies it very easily. I like this item for Sap 7, but it makes me excited to see where the rest of the build is going to go. Generally, when you slot Spear of the Magus this early, it's because you're going for a lifesteal build, kind of with that Vampiric Shroud in mind, but it is the Sands of Time, as you highlight earlier on. Maybe just looking to utilize that additional damage very early on to deal with some of the inherent protections of these gods.
Maybe we see an alternate timeline come out of Sap later on. Just noting he might be the primary focus. In this moment, however, it's going to be Calvin who's focused out by Rapio. He gets picked up and immediately able to dash away. Sap trying to return some damage against Rapio. The Scare's Blessing was for Rapio, but instead Rapio will only get it at the tail end of it after Silence has already fallen down.
Vaporish Coast makes a late rotation and thinks about maybe dropping the Caledonian Boar, but it would have just been for naught. There's no way the damage output from this Artemis alone would have been enough to shift up how that fight goes, and we see now one of the weaknesses of the Snake Hunters draft. Despite having a revive, it's all AoE damage coming through from Sap 7, so you may have kept Rapio alive, but you can't do it for everybody. Not everybody gets a Scare's Blessing. It's not Oprah Winfrey here. Instead, it's an easy kill for Sap to pick up, and I Silenced can at least die with a smile on his face knowing that he saved somebody's life.
Can you imagine if Scarab's Blessing was AoE though? Like the full circle of the radius that you have, if anybody's in there, they all get the benefit of it?
Yeah, there's a reason it's not the case.
Yeah,
Smart.
It'd be horribly unbalanced, but it'd be funny, at least for your team that has the scares busting. For the enemy team, it'd be the biggest frustration in the world.
Yeah, I agree. That would suck. And I'm using the scientific term here. That would be awful. I'd hate it.
It'd be the worst. I don't know why I brought it up. I don't know. I just like seeing horrendously unbalanced things for one use and then thinking about how unbalanced and horrible it being, going, you know what, maybe not. Let's just leave that one in the notebook.
Yeah. You have a notebook of just bad stuff that Smite could have?
Yeah, it's just called my brain. I just think of really bad like Smite balancings and go, yeah, let's never bring that to the light.
Yeah, let this act as a reminder for everyone in the chat that we on the casting team have no part of balance and are just here to talk about the game and be thankful for it.
Silence gets taunted back by Calvin, rooted in place by Sarpe, and looking for an escape route. Managed to walk away for the time, and will be able to dash away. E-Chrome trying to get aggressive as well as Sap as he's all the way in the front line, uses the ultimate and the Ghost, and E-Chrome's ult will be enough to close the gap and take him down and make it a double for E-Chrome as he finds Vaporish Coast. Rapio tries to leap away. He doesn't have Ragnarok, so he has to use the beads to get out of danger.
Red buff invade's going to ring true as well, and Team Joystick are utilizing that team fight prowess to its fullest potential. Sarpe is not even required to use his ultimate inside of that engagement. Instead, just relies on the damage output from Sap 7. And good call. Sap 7 is absolutely swinging at this point in the game. I thought maybe we would have seen Team Joystick try and just move their way over and start slamming this Gold Fury, but happy with the invade, happy with the kills. 4-0, hard to argue with it already. Looking at a 2,500, closer to 3,000 gold disparity, 8 minutes in. Generally, this is where we see them at the 26-minute mark. This is generally the 26-minute gold lead. But already 20 minutes faster, I'd say Team Joystick are feeling very good for it. Surrender vote actually tossed up here by Snake Hunters, and I don't think it's going to go through.
No, funny enough, actually, when Vaporish Coast got first blood in Game 1, they hit that surrender button just as a joke onto it. So this is something I think the EU players like to do. They die there and they go, all right, guys, just reset, game over for it. Not a literal game over, but just a kind of a joking, haphazard little mental reset for themselves.
Is that how they mental reset?
I don't know.
That's pretty crazy.
Well, I mean, I can't do this in my normal games at any time. I have to wait till 10 minutes to try and do that mental reset. So if I'm 0-5 by this point, I just have to live with it.
So you're telling me when you throw up a surrender vote and it doesn't go through, that resets your mental?
No, it usually never does. Well, it depends on the situation for it. If it was like I got outplayed really hard and I'm just like, yeah, that was cool, but nah.
Yeah, when I throw up an F6 vote and it doesn't go through, it makes me feel really, really bad. So maybe Snake Hunters, we're going to hope that they've got the mental reset that you're highlighting and they don't act more like me. I don't know, I'm a big baby, I suppose. Team Joystick, 4-0 at this point. Still 3,000 gold in the lead. And I'd like to see them try and push this advantage while they've got it, especially considering how early in the match it is, with Gold Fury having already spawned up. That is a great POI for them to look at, but instead it's Eye Silence.
Calvin gets a dash taunt against Eye Silence, but no major follow-up from the mid laner. It is just the Zhang Kui, no major big burst ultimate that can come from it. Instead, it's just little chip damage that comes from the card and the damage afterwards. Sap hitting level 10. It's about a level up over Pretty Prime, who's just not really been able to be a part of many of these fights. He's always on the tail end of it, just trying to find an escape route of his own to get away from Calvin.
All this poke you just put into Sap 7. We'll see how long it lasts. He's going to heal up a fair bit as Athena dashes in mid, isolates Eye Silence, drops him back down to about 50%. And yeah, Sap 7, despite taking all that poke, is full HP. Time to start to work your way towards the Gold Fury, I'd say, especially considering Silence is headed back to base. You know Rapio's on the right-hand side, Captain Odie as well. Yeah, good call, Joystick.
Vaporish Coast is the only one anywhere nearby, and I'm not sure if he's even going to try and rotate over towards. He's standing at the purple buff. And it looks like he's just going to go for his purple. Not even sure if he knows that this is happening right now, but there's no one on the map. Now everybody across the board will know that Gold Fury started up, and we're seeing a near 4,000 gold lead in favor of Team Joystick, one of the largest ones we've seen really at any stage of the game until they're doing those final sieges.
Yeah, 4,000 gold is generally where Joystick and Snake Hunters were sieging the Titan. Now, it's 10 minutes in, and in the early game, gold means so much more, and 4,000 at this point is nearly back-breaking. Team Joystick are primed and ready. The ball is in their court. They set the pace from here on out, and so far it's been a pretty quick pace. 4 kills already. I'd like to see them now start to shift their attention over towards this right-hand side, but maybe Snake Hunters gonna do the work for them, get a little bit of that gold for themselves, but they've spawned up the neutral objective, and I don't love the Snake Hunters' odds in a fight around a Pyro.
I am not sure where Sap is going with this build. Is he going for an early Rod to Hootie? Is he going for more cooldown with the Chronos Pendant? Or is he just going to buy a Charon's coin? I have not seen a Zhang Kui build like this so far in any of the SPL or SCC matches. Actually, I think this is first SC, so it'd just be SPL. But Sap gets caught out. Has to use Defender of Olympus from Calvin just to bail him out. He'll drive forward, trying to go for silence. Pulls him back in with the taunt, stunned in place inside the wall, but just not enough damage to take him down.
Yeah, maybe if he had backed and finished up that item, we might have seen enough there to put some threat on the Eye's silence, but Gauntlet of Thieves stacked up, already has tier 2 Magi's as well, got a decent bit of protection available, and even had they dropped him lower, still has the Scarab's Blessing as a last-ditch resort. So plenty of confidence here from Echrome, as you highlight, to just go ahead and steal those back camps, and confidence seems to be the name of the game here. Vaporish Coast, rest in peace.
Yep. Calvin blinks over the wall just in case, but I don't think Sarpé had any doubt in his mind that that one was going his way, as there's no Aegis available for Vaporish Coast, and certainly Beads and Caledonian Boar, neither of those are going to provide anything for you. And it will be a second item, Rod of Tahuti, coming out of SAP 7.
Look, level lead, gold lead, plenty of resources to work with. I think that Rod of Tahuti will serve him very well as a raw power infusion, as well as a little bit of penetration here. In Season 8. Silence dropped low, but nothing he's not used to. Should just walk away and let this tower fall down. Doesn't feel good, but at least he maintains his life.
You live, unlike your counterpart here with Vaporish Coast, who wasn't able to live the last skirmish, and that was under a tier 2 tower. So now that the safe haven of your tier 1 is gone, Vaporish is going to have to play even further back. Maybe now he has to go to Phoenix in order to try and live through some of these fights.
Captain Odie's been doing just fine in this lane, but we knew from the beginning that the solo laners were going to be a non-factor until they decide to eventually leave the lane. Neither one of them have had rotations from their junglers, and neither one of them has rotated out of the lane as of yet, really. So it's just a wet noodle fight here, and Captain Odie's been getting the better end of it for the most part throughout this match. Team Joystick have pushed their lead even further, now approaching the 6,000 point. 12 or 13 or so minutes into this game, and Pyromancer still available to be looked at by either of these teams, but Joystick is happy with the pace so far, can't argue with it. 7,000, closer to 8,000 experience in the lead as well, but that lead only lasts so long. You gotta utilize it while you have it, and they're gonna utilize it onto Rapio here.
Rapio leaps away, but Sarpé will chase him down. Card comes out from Sap and the Blizzard to try and slow him down. That'll be enough to get Rapio out, thanks to the Scarab's Blessing to keep him alive on the tail end of it, because without that ultimate, that would have been one dead Fenrir.
So Rapio forced back to base. Pretty Prime forced back to base, silenced. No ultimate available, and Pretty Prime actually sticking around here. Calvin going for the loop.
Sap is going to go in. Flicker is good, and the Beads just to make sure that Confound doesn't hit, but the Beads isn't going to stop Echrome from charging into the midst of everything. Aegis will slow down the process for a little bit, but Defender of Olympus will crush his hopes of making it out, and that'll be a double kill for Calvin as he dashes in. Now Echrome fighting against Rapio, but he'll use the Aegis to get away from the Brutalized, using a little bit of lifesteal. Thanks to that Aussie, Rapio falling low and falling down. That'll be 4 kills on the board for Team Joystick.
Captain Odie's here now and uses the Winds of Shamash to separate the engagement. That's all he does, just in time to mourn the deaths of his 4 buddies. It's just Captain Odie still drawing breath on the map, and Team Joystick 4 strong, relatively healthy, and Sap should be healing up just about near full HP off this next wave. Could be an opportunity to look towards this Pyromancer. Rapio still dead for 15 seconds. Vaporish Coast down for 10, but instead it's a blue buff invade, back camps invade, and maybe now maybe go to the pyro.
Slowly? Slowly but surely. All right, Calvin's there. We're good. Calvin has made it. Sarpé is on the way. We are 7,000 gold in the lead for Team Joystick, about 500 gold a minute that they're able to push ahead of Snake Hunter's experience. Well, it's even worse out. Nearly 12,000 after taking that Pyromancer, and you're really starting to see it in those levels. 2 in the jungle, 3 in the mid, 3.5 close to 4 between those supports, and 3 in the only person. Let me just shorten it down here. Only person not super far behind at this point is Captain Odie out of the solo lane. Sap will use the ultimate just to get a little bit of extra protection as he gets pulled back in by Rapio, but he's in no real threat. The cage is there just to hold in place for the moment being. That cage is there to protect Sap only for a short while until Captain Odie finally makes his rotation over and picks up 1.
Rapio falls down to the ultimate from Echrome. Easy rotation for the Chernobog, and now it's Silence and Odie on the retreat. Team Joystick have lost out on a lot of their team fight potential right as the the Primal Fury respawns, but taking out Rapio and Pretty Prime both can keep up the pressure. Red buff invade Tier 1 tower, and mid falls, and maybe even a Tier 2 as well at this rate.
Captain Odie taunted back in. E-Chrome doesn't get the root off after throwing out the duration with it. Looking for Tier 2 tower, Team Joystick, but they're not going to commit to it just yet. They don't have the minions and don't have nearly enough damage to go for those team fights. As you highlighted earlier, Sap is down and still is for another 6 seconds, but they don't necessarily need Sap if they want to try and go for this Primal Fury that is respawned.
Yeah, E-Chrome will be just enough damage for this one, and Lamogao, acting as goaltender, is going to keep the entirety of the Snake Hunters at bay, not even willing to walk into the jungle. And having cleared out Pyromancer just a moment ago means that Snake Hunters don't even have anywhere to go to on the map to try and mitigate some of the loss here. Team Joystick with a commanding 9,000 gold lead. 16 minutes into this game have, and I said it earlier, had the ball on their court. Now it's like in their court and they've removed some of the enemies. I mean, like it is a long shot odd here from the Snake Hunters, but Snake Hunters do have decent late game potential. If somehow Vaporish Coast is able to close up this 3-level gap and immense gold lead, Artemis has incredible scaling. Merlin, if he's able to close up his 4-level gold lead or 4-level XP lead, well then he's got decent scaling as well. But what are the odds of that happening? I'd say pretty low. Pull out my calculator, like 6.67% chance of it going through. So Snake Hunters hoping for a miracle here, 17 minutes into the game.
Is that your official percentage? 6.67%.
I pulled out the calculator. It's right here. I'm holding it up to you. You see the calculator?
I do see the metaphorical calculator that you've held up for me.
All right, there you have it.
Just us at home. It was there, metaphorically, maybe not physically, and Pretty Prime may not be here physically for much longer. Captain Odie going to try and stop Sap, but his ultimate makes sure he doesn't get yanked back by the drop kick. Pretty Prime does make it out, as well as Silence. Vaporish Coast look a little worse for wear as he dives under his own tower, and so will E-Chrome to chase him out, using that Living Nightmare to close that distance.
Meanwhile, Calvin and Sap 7 find themselves in no man's land behind the tower. Maybe it's their land, because Snake Hunters make way immediately. Not much left to fight over on this side of the map. Minion wave not pushed up, so Team Joystick going to go ahead and head on back to base. I'd argue now's the time for the Fire Giant. Might as well put that final nail in the coffin, and even if you don't get the neutral objective, you're at least forcing an engagement onto the Snake Hunters, and any engagement the Snake Hunters take is one they are unfavored in.
Sap going to walk forward and find 2. He gets picked up by Ragnarok. Calvin is there to try and play defense for him. Taunts Captain Odie. Sap able to avoid the drop kick, but he gets slammed against the wall, but he's surrounded by 4 and will not be making that here. Rapio getting the credit for the kill and getting a nice little bit of bounty for it to try and close up that experience gap.
Yeah, tell a lie. I said the Snake Hunters would not be favored in any engagement. I was not taking into account a 4 versus 1 against Sap 7, who did not have ultimate, was already half HP inside Snake Hunters back camps alone. That is an engagement the Snake Hunters very easily take, and they do this time around. Team Joystick gonna have to wait 30 seconds on this Zhongqi respawn. Fire Giant is just aging like a fine wine now. Team Joystick still completely in the driver's seat. 10,000 gold up, 19 minutes into the game. I think that the second this Zhongqi respawns, might as well just head on over and try and take out the Fuego Grande.
Look at the 5-level lead between the Hunters. Vapor took half of his health just from the leap alone, but immediately lands inside of a trap, and the ultimate from Silence make sure that Vapor's Coast can get out in just in time, because E-Chrome diving in has that Living Nightmare. Is he going to elect to use it? In this case, I probably would not take that bet.
So here's the thing about how I said earlier that Team Joystick's composition is really strong inside of the team fight. That's still true. They just haven't done it in the last 2 minutes, instead playing with their food a little bit, trying to find these isolated picks, and Artemis still has some of the best 1v1 potential in the game.
Captain Odie trying to bully Sap, and really it's primarily been Captain Odie dealing with Sap. Rapio's gotten some damage against him, but every single time that Captain Odie has rotated for a fight, he has been the one isolating Sap away from the fight. He's been the one controlling this mid lane mage, and now that Captain Odie is finally leaving the lane as both those towers are down, now that he's nearly hit that level 20 build, Sap's going to have to be a little bit more careful in these engagements.
Maybe a little bit, but if Sap has anybody with him, I'm sure he takes that fight up against Captain Odie pretty easily. Odie at this point does not have a whole lot of damage output, is going for an HP stack build to get the maximum value out of his first ability. The stim from Gilgamesh actually gives you additional damage based on your own maximum HP pool, so I like this build for Captain Odie as of right now, and has decent survivability into the likes of a Zhongqi, thanks to that Bulwark of Hope. And I know we don't get to see too often, but used to see all the time back in Season 4. Large HP infusion, as well as a good deal of magical defense.
A nice little shield when you drop a little bit low in health as well. Can never be too upset with getting some extra shields along the board, even when you do have a Khepri providing you some smaller shields while ever you get to stand around. But Snake Hunter stand around a little too long, and the Pyromancer goes the way of Team Joystick, and now looking towards that Fire Giant, already down to half health. Mogao and Calvin walking forward, find Rapio, and catch him right on the ring of fire. Sarpei leaps into the backline looking for anybody they can. Aegis comes out of pretty prime, but that Aegis is not going to help him for much longer, as Sarpei's damage is just too much.
Now it's E-Chrome leading the charge with the help of Sap 7. Eye silenced. Still has the Scarab's Blessing, but only as long as it took me to say it. Lamogao, credit for this kill, and where's Vaporish Coast at? Well, he's alone. I like his odds in the 1v1 because he won it last time around, picking up a tier 2 tower as well. Gotta feel good with Team Joystick. Probably feeling a little bit better as they're going to get the fire.
Delaying the inevitable, Sarpei trying to go for a solo kill against Vaporish Coast, but not enough damage to take down the Hunter. Instead, the rest of Team Joystick set their sights towards fire. Drop kick against 2. Sap is low. Sap is down as Captain Odie leaps on top of him with the heroic leap, getting a lot of damage back through. Fire Giant still has not been leashed yet. Captain Odie is trying to buy as much time as possible, but it's not going to be enough as Fire Giant goes the way of Team Joystick.
But it's going to be Sap 7 missing out on the Fire Giant belt, so a little bit of HP 5 loss, a lot of power loss from your Zhong Kui, but with the gold lead as it stands, and I feel like I'm highlighting it all the time, now we're still approaching that 11,000 gold point. Team Joystick has not slipped up a little bit as far as the farm is concerned, and with 3 tier 2 towers still standing for the Snake Hunters, Team Joystick are only going to be able to push this lead even further. 22 minutes of the game, experience is starting to mean less and less, except for a couple of players I silenced at level 13. So it's going to be a little while till Snake Hunters actually have a dedicated front line. I mean, this Khepri is wet paper inside of these engagements. Magi's Blessing does not afford you a whole lot of protections, and Sovereignty helps a little bit, but maybe not against the Zhong Kui, who is the heart and core of this Team Joystick squad. As of right now, the Order side team is going to be working their way down the left-hand side, and their siege potential is strong because their all-in potential is strong, and Zhong Kui actually auto-attacks towers twice, so that's pretty fast as well. This should be a pretty swift tier 2.
Give him some rings, give him some more attack speed, make those basics do a little bit more, but probably don't because you'll kind of stunt your damage build there for it. So instead, Sap going for a third, or I guess technically fourth, because Spear of the Magus, a fourth lifesteal item along the side of his build. After Rada Tahuti, he went for the Soul Gem and the Typhon's Fang. Curious as to where this option will go. He's got 2 more options to pick between here, between the Pythags and the Bancroft's Talon. Instead, it'll be stripping away the tier 2 towers off the board, left side one down, mid falls as well, and Team Joystick now start regrouping towards the left side of the map.
Yeah, might as well strip away that all-important left side Phoenix, the one furthest away from the Fire Giant, and the easiest, or hardest rather, to defend once you're on those Fire Giant sieges. It's Mogao in first. Calvin slightly off the mark with Confound should spell the end of this skirmish here as everybody starts to lick their wounds. Sap 7 dropped down to 50%, does not have Fire Giant to resustain, so instead gonna have to go heal up off a wave. Might as well keep his escort with them. Sarpei gonna stick with their mid laner. 3-2 split now for Team Joystick.
They'll do just so. Rapio picks up Calvin and brings him into the clutches of 4, and Calvin doesn't have an escape route. He gets plucked back by Eyes Silence, and the fight starts the way of Snake Hunters looking for E-Chrome. Gets the Living Nightmare, but he has no targets to go towards. Instead, he drops right back down and dashes into the wall to try and find an escape route. Mogao is full health, staring them down, and now Sap and Sarpei have rotated in.
Mid Phoenix falls. Sap and Sarpei have done their work and then some. A forged ghost
takes him down. Silence finds Sarpei in the midst of it. It's a 2-for-1 trade in favor of Snake Hunters, but Sap, after his nice little regen in mid lane, finds some huge damage in the fight.
They do, and the siege continues. Mogao, E-Chrome, and Sap 7, yeah, they chunk Phoenixes. It's all up to Odie and Silence for a couple of seconds to buy time for their team.
They're able to do so for the time being. E-Chrome is low. Pretty Prime has rotated back in, throws out the Eclipse. Rapio tries to close the gap with the Brutalize, but gets stunned out instantly. Mogao has to leap away. Silence low on health, low on mana as well as Captain Odie. He'll leap in and try and slow down Sap. They're able to find him. Rapio gets one and gets the second one, taking him down and draining it out 3 for 2.
Mogao still draws breath, and with 4 members in his trap in the Cajun lane, should be able to walk away from this one. Left side Phoenix does remain standing for the Snake Hunters. Mid Phoenix not nearly as lucky, but Team Joystick only have Fire Giant on 1 member. Luckily for them, that buff was only going to last another 20 seconds. 1 minute after that, Fire Giant will respawn, and I got to think Team Joystick are going to go ahead and try and work their way towards that 12,000 gold in the lead. Experience still in their favor, but a huge infusion of experience towards Eye Silence. Comes into that siege at level 13, walks out of it at level 17. This Khepri is now a contender inside of these team fights.
He's closed up that gap significantly. Fire Giant has now fallen off of all members, whether it be by their choice or by just the nature of the timer finally expiring. And that one will come back up in just under a minute, and that'll be the next big target. This next one could very well be the last one, but we said that in game number 1, and they decided to ignore the Fire Giant and just go for the fight instead. We'll see if Team Joystick follows suit, as the only Tier 2 tower left standing is the one on the solo lane side of the map. And evening out as far as kind of plateauing things here. Team Joystick haven't been able to get past this 12,000 gold lead just yet. They've been sitting around this 10 to 12 lead for about the last 8 or so minutes of the game.
Yeah, I'd argue they don't really need to anymore. This should be the last team fight of the game if Team Joystick is able to win it. If Snake Hunters wins the team fight handily, they do have one exposed Phoenix they can try and siege through after that, but got to think that these towers and all the defense the Titan is afforded by these towers in favor of Team Joystick should dissuade the Snake Hunters. So it could be 2 team fights favoring Snake Hunters that wins them the game, or Team Joystick just takes this one. Fire Giant going to be barreling down to the earth very soon, and Snake Hunters are slightly grouped. They're grouped adjacent, but maybe not going to put up a defense of the Fire Giant itself.
There's nobody here to try and stop this fire. I'm not sure if they even know that it's going on right now. They take it down quickly, and Sarpe is just chilling out in mid lane, saying what's up, seeing where everybody's just at across the board. And Snake Hunters there are now all spread out. 3 of them went back to base, and well, now all 5 of them are going back. And Tier 2 tower will not live much longer. It will fall down to Team Joystick, and now they can look towards sieging up this right side Phoenix.
So the defense from the Snake Hunters was pretty good, but last time Team Joystick gave them a 5 versus 3 to start the fight off, so maybe a mistake they are looking to rectify here. As you can see, it's a 4-1 split with Sarpe kind of hovering around mid, trying to generate some pressure and allow these fire minion waves into the base of Snake Hunters.
Calvin walks forward, but maybe remembering what happened to him last time as he got plucked back, and it was just a CC chain with no escape for Calvin to make it out. So he'll sit a little bit further back and drop the bracer in the middle of the team, grant them that little bit of extra power buff for themselves. He'll blink in, find 2, gets the beads away from Vapor's Coast instantly. The Winds of Shamash drop, and Echrome and Sapper zoned away from the fight while Mogao is trying to hold them all off in the cage on the back side, but 3 of them were locked inside, and all 3 of them are looking rather healthy.
Meanwhile, in mid, Sarpe gets the better end of the 1v1 up against Rapio and strips away the Phoenix yet again. Team Joystick slowly whittling at the base of the Snake Hunters, and with a fair deal of resources used, both the cage and ultimate from Calvin, means the Snake Hunters, having only used the Winds of Shamash, still have a lot left in the tank.
Mogao looking for more. Sap blinks into the middle of 3 and drops the ultimate. Vapor's Coast is getting very low. The Ghosts are doing so much damage to him. The Scare's Blitzing is enough to keep him alive for the time. He takes down Echrome, and as well looking at Sarpe, but Sarpe's dealing way too much damage back. And is able to get a nice return kill, but it's a 2-for-1 trade as Pretty Prime finds 1.
The Phoenix does eventually fall thanks to the efforts of Sap 7, and Mogao likely going to pay for it with his life here. Pretty Prime gonna have to work a little bit harder to find this kill.
Oh no, the cage makes sure that that one is stopped dead in its tracks. Mogao just barely able to make it out thanks to the help of the stun in that cage coming back off of cooldown, as he had just a decent amount of CDR to bring that one back despite using it on that right side.
Stone of Gaia plus Fire Giant means that you are constantly healing. You're a walking fountain for yourself. I mean, he is always going to be alive inside of these engagements, and as long as Pretty Prime is trying to deal damage in the arcane stance, we'll at least proc that passive from the Stone of Gaia. Yeah, Lamogao is super, super hard to kill. Mid and right Phoenix taken away. Snake Hunters now only have 1 bird standing, and it's the arguably most important one, the one furthest from the Fire Giant, but that only really rings true if it's the first one being sieged. Otherwise, they still have to contend with 2 lanes of fire minions, and Team Joystick, with about a minute left on this Fire Giant, should be able to regroup and try and keep up this siege. Sarpe and Echrome not going to have the Fire Giant for themselves, means that the siege potential is slightly weakened. The dive from Sarpe is going to deal a little bit less damage, is what I would have said had he not just picked up an enhanced red buff. And Echrome going to deal a little bit less damage to the Phoenixes themselves, is what I would have said had he not gone for the kind of Phoenix shredding build. So instead, I'd argue Team Joystick are just fine to keep up this siege, but it's all about whether or not they can execute on it properly. Snake Hunters were able to save so many of their resources to the very last dive that despite continued efforts from Team Joystick, it still was a great defense.
This is where the falter of Team Joystick was in their last attempt, was this left side Phoenix. Now that they have mid and right side down, they're going to have to send a couple of people over there every so often to make sure and strip those waves away, and that's more than enough for Team Joystick because they can walk right in and start sieging at this left side. Captain Odie and Rapio sitting around mid. Mogao wraps all the way around trying to find anything that he can. He'll throw some damage at Captain Odie, and he'll walk forward with Calvin just to make sure they can start sieging up this left side Phoenix. Cage drops down from Mogao, looking to hold anybody in place that he can, but Captain Odie is undeterred by it. He'll walk forward and try and stop Calvin, who has to use Defender of Olympus just to get away.
The Titan now under attack, forces Rapio to peel back. Team Joystick, this should be the trigger to go in.
Mogao is trying to play front line, and Calvin will walk forward as well. Pretty Prime gets stunned out and takes quite a bit of damage from Sap, but returns some fire immediately with that Blizzard. But he's losing out on so much health just from that card ticking away at his life.
There goes Rapio back to the Titan, which again means Joystick going to work their way in yet again.
Link in from Calvin. Pretty Prime gets the Scarab's Blessing. Left side Phoenix falls down, and Sap finds Pretty Prime. Drop kicked against the wall and taken out by Porsche. Coast makes it a 1-for-1, but those minions are starting to pour in. E-Chrome get low. E-Chrome going down. Rapio picks him up, and Calvin has no defender to get out. It'll be a double kill for Rapio.
Titan going to take a little bit more damage here. Sarpei maneuvers the map. He's just being annoying, though. He's going to strip away this speed buff and maybe a little bit more afterward. But 3 Phoenixes down for Snake Hunters. That's a hard position to fight in from, and it's a hard position to defend from as well. Fire Giant going to be barreling down to the earth very shortly, but Sap, Calvin, and E-Chrome all dead for the better half of a minute here. So 30 seconds left on each of them means that Snake Hunters legitimately have a decent power play, but as all the waves are pushed up, as all the lanes have fire minions barreling down, I'm not sure that Snake Hunters can even utilize this time while 3 members of Joystick are in the grayscale.
Captain Odie is really starting to become a problem for this team. As you can see, he was topping the charts for his team in player damage, still with Sap and E-Chrome, or Sap and Sarpei actually, sitting at the top for Team Joystick and the top of the charts as a whole, but putting out 28,000 player damage as a, let's just call him full tank. Void Shield is pretty much a tank item at this point for him. Full tank, dealing out that much player damage, being this much of an asset for Captain Odie. If he can get into these fights a little bit quicker, get to that front or that back line, and maybe try and deal with Sap and E-Chrome, Snake Hunters still have a chance. Both their Phoenixes that were down earlier have come back up.
Yeah, they've respawned them, but have a couple more fire minion waves to deal with before they can feel confident in stepping up to the Fire Giant. I think Pretty Prime going to go ahead and contend with the mid wave, and the rest of the Snake Hunters are grouped up inside of the jungle, could come down to a fight inside of the neutral territory. Captain Odie, as you said, has been able to deal a lot of damage inside of these engagements, but does not necessarily have 1v1 potential up against Sap. It's all about distracting the Zhongqi and creating space for the rest of your team. It's got to be Rapio, it's got to be Pretty Prime, it's got to be Vaporish Coast stepping up in a big way here for the squad, and Vaporish has been doing a legitimately good job, as has Pretty Prime, both sitting at 25,000 damage on the charts, doing a lot better than some of these other guys on the side of Team Joystick. E-Chrome in particular is struggling.
Mogao getting low. That drop kick into a pluck was so big for him. Rapio finds E-Chrome, gets the pizza and the Aegis away from him. Both front line have to walk away, and as soon as Sap even thinks about trying to fight, he gets burned down instantly. Vaporish Coast gets 1. Drop kick by Odie, puts another one against the wall, and puts 2 up for Vaporish Coast.
Sarpei finds the kill in the backline, though. Rapio isn't going to get away with it for free, but somebody's got to go back to base, and this time around it's going to be Pretty Prime, just making sure that Titan stays standing.
Big heal there for Mogao as he's able to find a stun against 1. Mogao just jump back over the wall and get back to his safety with Calvin, but they're keeping 3 distracted. Pretty Prime still has to watch out for this left side because minions are still pouring through. Double taunt in, but it's not going to do them much good as Mogao gets pulled back, drop kicked right against the wall, and a leap from Mogao to get away.
Sarpei playing with fire over here has shown himself on a couple of wards. Pretty Prime knows he's here.
Oh, Pretty Prime's got to be careful. He's already lost half his health in the fight, and Pretty Prime may fall down here. Not enough damage to take out Sarpei.
That might be GG.
And with that, if they can hold him away, it's looking like it's a good game here for Team Joystick, holding them at that Fire Giant pit, and more than enough time for Sarpei to try and walk in and take this Titan, just waiting for those minions to walk in.
Hey, the minions are here, and the Titan's going to fall quick. Nice try, Pretty Prime. You were able to keep the base alive just a little bit longer, but Merlin versus Bastet in the late game, yeah, that's not a 1v1 you win.
Now Bastet with full damage and Merlin with no defense to his name and not enough lifesteal in the world to keep himself alive from it. It's going to be a nice and quick kill for Sarpé and a nice little victory out there at the end of it for Team Joystick.
It was, but it wasn't easy, was it? Despite having a commanding lead for the entirety of the match, upwards of 10,000 gold at the 20-minute mark, despite all of that, it was a constant back-and-forth battle around these Phoenixes, around the Fire Giant. At the end, it was micro plays that won him the game. Congratulations, Sarpé. With that last play, you earned my MVP for this one.
Team Joystick come up with a nice 2-1 victory, but we're going to take it back to the desk after this break to finish breaking down set number 1.
And we are back after our first set of 4 comes to a close. Our first set of 2 over in EU, and it is Team Joystick who continue their winning ways. They complete their first round robin against everyone else in the EU SCC, only dropping 1 set. And that's, of course, to Elysium. The ability to turn around these sets, ever so important, especially after going down in Game 2. This one, very back and forth, a lot closer than the other two games were in this one. And Gore, I think that bodes well for Snake Hunters moving forward.
Yeah.
You don't get absolutely crushed in Game 3, but this is a glimpse to why the Snake Hunters team is 1-4 in the EU SCC, because you go to 3 games, you look competitive. Closing out sets continues to be an issue for this squad. Not so much an issue, except for Elysium, for Team Joystick. This is a team that is consistently now being able to find themselves some wins.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they have now solidified themselves, put them right behind Elysium, they say have that one loss. So depending on what happens with Elysium, what is that, later this week on Saturday or something like that, that can shift things up pretty interestingly for them. But ultimately, you get to see, I think, a team that understands what they're doing. Snake Hunters had a really good draft phase in game number 2, but the adjustments from Game 1 to Game 2, while it was great for Snake Hunters, was better here from Game 2 to Game 3 for Joystick. Letting them have the Fenrir, knowing that they had ways to counter it, making the Zhang Kui look pretty good, as well as Sarpei getting a second chance on this Bastet. Everybody got to step up a little bit more here, and it feels like you said, much more back and forth, but still started to like have those themes you could see very early on as to where Joystick were starting to pull ahead and where they really were keeping things just much more in their favor.
Ooh-wee, that is a lot of damage. I'm happy that Sarpei ran back the Bastet. I was sad with how it looked in Game 2 here. So always nice to see the less played gods start to see some play and actually end up doing well. 34,000 damage score. That's pretty good here, because
that's a good chunk.
When we talk about Bastet, there's some flexibility in the jungle right now as far as what you want to play. You can play the Osiris, the run in and chop wood for the entire team fight. Sarpei, what you do on Bastet is jump in and do damage. There's not a lot of CC, a lot of lockdown in that kit. There is a little bit, but doing 34,000 damage is what you want to do in that game, and that's what Sarpei was able to do. Lots of damage, though, for Coast and Captain Odie, and a lot of that came on those Phoenix defenses. Snake Hunters did not make Game 3 easy at all for Team Joystick. And surprising, Gore, right in that 33,000 damage conversation was this Zhang Kui.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it on the desk before going into Game 3. Maybe this is the type of draft where it can work, and I think being able to WQ with the rest of your team bodes well for Zhang Kui.
Yeah, look, he's a big boy, and there wasn't a lot of people to try and eat through that health bar. He's very good at sustaining himself throughout that lane, and again, without enough burn on the other side, it just made it a little easier for him to continue that sustain. I mean, you could see his healing, not massive, but that just counts healing to teammates, not just the healing he's doing to himself. So a lot of sustain to keep him in the game, as well as just his health bar being a little thicker than a normal mage's, made it a lot more difficult to have the Fenrir jump in on him, let alone anybody else. And then you've got a Bastet backing you, your damage output is just insane.
Yeah, no, Spear of the Magus and then Rod of Tahuti, if I remember correctly in that build. There was a lot of front-loaded damage for the Zhang Kui, and Team Joystick ran with that moving forward. Let's take a look and see how the schedule is now updated after our first set of 2 here in EU, and that is Team Joystick over Snake Hunters. They win a 2-1 set. And so we've talked a little bit about Elysium. It is Elysium versus Just F6, and that will be on Saturday. And so Elysium needs to win that one to have sole possession of first place. But up next, we have Pandemonium versus Goodnight Nick, which, standings-wise, Gore, actually a little bit more important than the first set was. Snake Hunters fall down to 1-4. They were not able to catch Team Joystick even with a win, but they could have closed that gap. Pandemonium and Goodnight Nick could be tied. I guess technically Goodnight Nick would have the tiebreaker in the head-to-head department. So you could jump from 5th to 3rd here if you're Goodnight Nick with a win.
Yeah, that's honestly heavy weighted when it comes down to any of your matchups. Right now, this, as you had mentioned earlier, but this is the last phase of the first round robin, so this is the last team that is a unique matchup for them. Next week they start over again. This is pretty much the halfway point. Once today ends, that is the last time that they will have until, that'll be the latter half of the 4 weeks afterward. What am I trying to say here? It's the midpoint of the phase, which is exactly what I was trying to make, and that is where they are. If you can end that in a much more comfortable position, 3rd, like you had said, maybe going 2-3 with a head-to-head matchup, taking that spot, as opposed to going down to 1-4, 1-5. It's much easier to make that climb back and potentially end up in the top 2.
And Pandemonium is Cherio's current team, so if you want to see some more Cherio in the jungle, make sure you stay tuned. Pandemonium versus Goodnight Nick, our second and final EU SCC set of the day, coming up after this break. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you in a sec.